How are you guys doing on this Friday night? Well, Friday night is movie night, and this game had all the makings of a prove 'em revenge tour. The Raptors are playing their best basketball of the season, and they're going up against an opponent at home, well, on the road for the Raptors, that is also playing some very inspired basketball. This had the makings of a rivalry. Joel Embiid is no stranger to Raptor fans. Definitely no stranger to me. Made that entire low light clip of him last year hurting other players. I do not like Joel Embiid. There are not a lot of NBA players that can genuinely say I do not like them, but he is one of them. I respect him though. And tonight, it feels like there was a play in the fourth quarter where he went and grabbed the rebound over Scottie Barnes and Pascal Siakam, and you just get a look at him and you're like, how are you supposed to stop someone like this? He is 7'1", probably 280, 270, built like a tank. I guess you just have to hope that one of his antics at some point stop him, gets a flagrant, gets himself kicked out of the game. There's just not a lot you can do from a physical standpoint. He is too quick. He made Jakob Poeltl look like a pylon on the court. That's not easy to do. Jakob Poeltl is he's no scrub. He's not switchy anymore. But it felt like the Raptors had a formula to crack this. They had it. And it really started with Scottie Barnes, right? Comes out like gangbusters in the first quarter. Again, proving once and for all that he's not just a fourth quarter scorer. He is a when you need me, crack the glass scorer. Okay? When my team doesn't have it, I can go get mine scorer. I think Scottie's a necessity guy. He prefers the pass. He would love to play. I mean, God, if Scottie Barnes was here and he could say, you'd say, "Hey, Scottie, what's your dream game?" 10 points, 25 assists. That's probably his dream game, right? He wants other guys to eat. But what do you do when other guys aren't hitting shots, holding on to the ball too long, missing layups? Well, you got to take over. Otherwise, the game's going to be a blowout. And I think in that first quarter, the Raptors kept it pretty close. In the beginning of the second quarter, it started to fall apart, right? That Siakam lineup, suddenly it's a blowout. I'm getting messages saying, "Hey, start the live stream early. This game is over." And I'm like, just wait till Scottie comes back in. This will get competitive again. I have not looked at the plus minus for this game, but I assure you it reflects that. I don't think Siakam was at fault. I mean, some people are saying he just had this terrible game, 5 for 15 or whatever, expecting me to come here and rip him a new one. I don't think he had necessarily a terrible game until later on when he forced a couple of bad ones. I don't think he had a terrible game. I will, however, say let me say that there are a few Raptors who had really bad games. Number one, oh man, this hurts my heart. It hurts my heart to say it, but I'm gonna say it. Jeff Doughton, yo, all the praise, all the love we've been showering you with, man. You can't sell like that on defense. That was a bad defensive effort from Jeff Doughton. Something I don't even know how my lips are saying that, but man, I'm working on a Jeff Doughton video right now, backed by popular demand, about how great he's been on defense, and he just did not bring it. And Nick Nurse did not go to him in the second half, and I definitely support that decision, right? Um, Fred VanVleet, my God. I mean, there are people in the chat saying he had a great game. Are you kidding me? No, he did not. He hit a couple threes. I think, let's look at the stats here. I mean, the stats just rarely ever tell the story entirely, but taking a quick look at those, Fred VanVleet, 5 for 17, 3 for 10 from three, took a lot of contested shots, 6 turnovers. Chaz, if you're still here, please, my friend, come on at some point tonight and tell me how you think he had a good game. Yo, the stats are telling the full story here, but like, my God, he was terrible. He just happened to be on the court during like a couple of decent stretches, but like, man, like he was the worst part of those stretches. He took terrible shots. He took shots at the rim that he had no business trying to even attempt. He looked off Scotty on Shake Milton in order to drive into 2 defenders. What the hell? This was the ultimate Fred VanVleet wants to exercise his Philadelphia demons. He has not played well in the playoffs against this team, and for good reason. Yo, Tyrese Maxey is a terrible defender. James Harden is better this year, but he's no great defender. You have a point guard who thinks he's an all-star who can't get past either one of these guys at all. Where are you expecting to go with this? Where are you expecting high volume Fred to take you in the playoffs? I'm sorry, like you're not gonna find a backcourt that's more defensively compromised than this. I mean, try going up against the Knicks, Emmanuel Quickly and Quentin Grimes, and those guys bodying up on you. It's not gonna be fun, right? God, like what? What the hell? This was a terrible game for Fred. And I think he disrupted the flow when Scotty had to go in the first quarter. He tried to disrupt the flow for a couple of possessions. Boom. We're playing close. Bam. Lead goes to 6. Think he turns the ball over once, or he just has this terrible shot. He had an air ball. Like, what the hell? Siakam late. Man, just stop going to him. Please, just stop going to him late. It's not, he's not built for these moments. Yo, if you play basketball, there's a miss, and then there's a miss. I don't know if like this is gonna get clipped on Twitter or something because I'm crazy, but like there is a difference between how you miss. If you miss clear of the rim, you got shook on that, or someone bumped your arm. There's no shooter in the NBA, no matter how tired, no matter if they played 85 minutes that game, 5 overtime, 6 overtime game. There is no reason for you to miss the rim on shots from 12, 15 feet. Like, it's just, there has to be something mentally. There's a lapse of focus. Your brain is clouded, okay? Too often, he's not just missing these shots in the fourth quarter, he is missing rim. He's missing everything, okay? So, this is shook. This is too many things going through your head. Scotty Barnes had a shook moment where he, loses concentration for a second, throws the ball to the referee. We're not going to duck that. But overall, I think Scotty had a great game. And this is back-to-back games. And you know what? You can consider the stretch of the season the fourth quarter. Everything is quarters, right? Money's in quarters. Everything's in quarters. So you can break this season down to Scotty's a fourth quarter guy, right? That's what he's been accused of. Why didn't he show up in the first quarter, yo? Why doesn't he show up in the second quarter? Well, because closers are closers for a reason. And he's trying to close the season out strong. I remember that interview that I did with Brian where he's, I believe, direct quote, where he said, in April, this shit could look completely different. Well, it's starting to look different. That midi turnaround, he has, for most of the season, been consistently one of the worst mid-range shooters in the league because it's a new thing he's been adapting. But right now, even the commentators had to mention it. When he goes bump, turnaround, feels pretty unstoppable. What this game showed me is Scotty Barnes has a lot of work to do because the way that he can gap and the way that he can attack and transition, man, if he gets a little bit stronger, becomes a better shooter, the Raptors are sitting pretty next year. Now, I'm going to play a little clip from Nick Nurse pregame. Everyone's talking about it. We're going to talk about it, obviously, because I think, Nick Nurse, some surprising candor here. And here, I'm just going to play it for you guys real quick. If you haven't heard it yet, here.
I think when this season gets done, we'll evaluate everything, and even personally, like I'm going to take a few weeks to see where I'm at. Like you said, where's my head at, and just see how the relationship with the organization is and everything. It's been 10 years for me now, which is a pretty good run. Right now, my head is to get this and make this as long a season as possible. This team needs playoff experience, right? So that is where I'm at right now.
More thought then, for whatever the reason, you might not be back next year?
No, I think that I'm concentrated on this job for sure, and this game, essentially. But I think 10 years is a good time to sit back and reflect a little bit, right? So I think that's where we're going. We'll do that all when the season ends.
I have seen a lot of coaches when they know they're about to depart. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to get fired. There's too much dignity here for him to be fired. But just like Fred VanVleet, when he went on his little press tour and he, threw his little hissy fit, just like when, he says what he says, he speaks in code. Nick Nurse is not going to be fired. You are not going to take the guy who won a championship and say he's fired. What he's going to do probably is gracefully quit. They're going to give him that, as they do with people that they like, and they still like him. I'm sure they like him. But to me, looking at this bench, looking at this team play, it is so obvious that so many players on this team just, they've checked out. They've checked out. You can change the phases, but this team has not performed to expectations. Okay? So I, Phil, it's not even like that. It's just it's something that you do, right? When a guy is just, it's a mutual parting. You let the guy save face, right? It's not good for anyone's resume to be fired, okay? Especially after a bad season. It's one thing when Dwayne Casey is fired after winning Coach of the Year. It's a little bit different when Nick Nurse, would be fired after, 2 out of 3 really bad seasons, including Tampa. So, look, I welcome this. I really do. I think this team needs new ideas. I still believe in him as a coach. I think he'll do really well somewhere else. This is me being nuanced. Sometimes you just you need a change of scenery. Some people need a divorce. Some people need a breakup. Some people need a vacation. Some people need an exorcism. Honestly, some people just need a change of scenery. And I think for the Raptors and for Nick Nurse, I think the best thing to do would be to explore other options. And there are a lot of great young coaches in the league. And I got to tell you, from a personality fit, I have really warmed up to this idea of Ime Udoka. I really have. There's a lot of connections here, man. I'm telling you, there's a lot of connections. And I think for Nick Nurse, maybe a year off, a sabbatical or whatever, and then look at a team like the Houston Rockets, man. There's a lot of great young talent that needs to be molded there, and or potentially ruined. And there's no Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam and all these championship ties to get in the way to override your critical thinking. Honestly, I believe that sometimes we just become blind to our own biases. Okay. To the end of this show, we're going to talk about a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Talking to Strangers. And I think that it is a great book. And as most Malcolm Gladwell books are mind-changing. But that is truly a great one that I've been reading a lot lately, and I've just really loved it. Our callers are lined up. We got Larry. We got Coach Mo. Oh, man, this is going to be a fun one. But let's talk about the game first. Now, someone's flashed onto Twitter for me a stat. And it was a damning stat. They said the Raptors are 8-0 when they get over 30 assists. And with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, I looked, and they were at 25 assists. And I was like, oh, man, is this record on the line? Because there's no way in hell they're winning this game in Philly. But, man, is this 30-0 thing going to hold up? And tonight, the Raptors, they kind of prove it, don't they? 26 assists on 84 field goals. I tell you, there was that's hard to believe. Sorry, on 42 field goals. So, wow, 84 field goals. My bad. 42 field goals. At one point, they were at 25 assists on 38 field goals. That means they're like, okay. I guess that makes sense. They just didn't make a lot of shots down the stretch. 56%. The defense, really 38% from 3 on higher volume. I just think that the Raptors, it's hard to look at this team and say, how much better could they play? They got to the line. I don't know. I think Scotty played well, but apart from that, it's hard to look at it and say, like, who played really well. I think OG Anunoby guarded his, heart out. Early on, we saw a lot of Jakob Poeltl on Joel Embiid. That matchup was not working. And then they tried to go with OG Anunoby, a little bit more mobile, front him, try to deny him the basketball, shade Scottie Barnes over on the second, put in a double. There's just not a lot you can do. Like, Thinking Basketball released a video on Joel Embiid and said Joel Embiid is a 300-pound point guard. I find that to be perhaps the most accurate depiction of what Joel Embiid is. He is a very, very scary player. He has basically mastered a lot of Kobe's skill set, but he's packaging it in a 7'1" body that flails around like a fish out of water. He is a scary player to even go up against. The intimidation factor is so prevalent. You'd see Scotty Barnes basically covering his head when he's trying to guard him because you just don't know when one of those elbows is going to clock you. And I mean, look, the NBA should definitely step in and have a conversation with Joel Embiid. He is an extremely large human being. And as with Shaq, as with anyone of this size, you have to be very mindful of the fact that an elbow is not an elbow is not an elbow. Okay? Fred VanVleet swinging an elbow at your head is not going to kill you. Okay? Joel Embiid coming at your legs the way that he often does when he dives into the crowd or dives into the front row, this shit could end your career like really fast. Okay? He needs to be mindful of it. I know that he is, I don't mean to get personal with players, but he is just a remarkably immature human being. So he probably doesn't even care. And I'm not saying he's a bad person. And I don't think that was ever the point. I think he's just a child in so many ways. And the way that he throws his body around, the way that he flails his arms around, I mean, this is no joke. Like this is the type of shit that can end someone's season. I mean, you're talking about potentially taking $85 million off of somebody. I'm honestly waiting for someone to just clock him. I am. And the next time he does a dirty play, I want someone to do it. This is a call out to all NBA players. Just do it. Send a message that this is not okay. The number of times I've seen him take a cheap shot or a dirty shot, I do not like cheap shots. When Siakam pulled down Dame Lillard by his ankle, I was not okay with it. That is just not cool. That's the type of shit that can really like mess up an athlete. You don't do that. It's not sportsmanlike. It's not cool. It's not ethical. It's not fair. So, Scotty hurts his wrist. I think the announcers made way too big a deal out of it. I think he just got his, wrist caught on Embiid. He's obviously holding that left wrist. It's all taped up for a reason. He is hurt. And despite that, he puts up a big night. But let's look at some of the Philadelphia performance. I mean, honestly, where would the Raptors be without George Niang, right? Like, honestly, like, where would the team be? George Niang is like Doc Rivers' version of Fred VanVleet. I don't know why he keeps playing him. He played him 12 minutes. It feels like he was out there for what felt like 5 hours. That is impressive. Sorry, I am genuinely shocked because every time he was out there, it was so obvious he was out there. He picked up 4 fouls. Well, he made his presence known. Joel Embiid, 25 points. You limit his touches. I mean, he only got 13 shot attempts. This is a guy who could easily put up 40, 50 on any given night. You limit him to 25, I take that as a win. On 7 for 13, I think you did your job with Joel Embiid, for sure. Tyrese Maxey. Oh, talk about guys that I would love to see on the Raptors at some point. Not a big scoring night from him, but, it was not needed, and it came in clutch. James Harden, brilliant. Probably the Sixers' best player tonight. Definitely the Sixers' best player tonight. Just masterful execution of the game. I think Paul Reed gave him great minutes off the bench. Shake Milton is a really good, starting. I think he's a really good rotation guard. The Raptors probably another guy that the Raptors could look at. And DeAnthony Melton, man, underrated addition. And I think that sort of 3-guard, very undersized team with Joel Embiid, I think that's just clicking for the Sixers. And look, if the Raptors end up drawing this team in the playoffs, I mean, my God, like curtains. Like, it is this very scary matchup. But honestly, you could say the same thing. I mean, there was a stat flash during the game where, the Raptors had the 7th best record since February 3rd. Was it February 3rd? Yeah, February 3rd. And it was still fifth in the East. I mean, there are a lot of teams playing really well in the East, some of which played tonight, some of which, won tonight. And I think this is just a costly loss, to be honest. The Raptors finally move over 500 and then, to dip it now. I feel like 7th, 6th, this stuff should probably go out the window. You are looking at probably best case 8th, likely outcome 9th. So at least you'll have home court for one. But for a team that has always struggled on the road, to have your season decided on the road is going to be a tough pill to swallow, in my opinion. So it would be paramount to get to the 8th, and then at least make sure that when your season is being decided, that you get to decide it in front of this faithful fan base that has supported this product all year. All right. Let's bring on our first caller. And okay, let's bring out first caller. Larry, what's up, man? How are you doing?
Good, Rob. How are you?
I am good.
Good, good.
What'd you think of the game tonight?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was appalled in the first half with the way they played defense. It just was non-existent. I mean, they almost. I mean, I thought they're going to give up 80 points, which was, I think they gave up 77 in the end. But it was a disaster. And it all started to unravel at the beginning of the second quarter. I thought when I think Scotty played the entire 12 minutes of the first quarter, was on the bench to start the second. And that's where it started to unravel. This guy is really glue for this team. And it's becoming more apparent by the game. I like what you said about, he's like fourth quarter Scotty. Well, he's like, this is the last quarter of the season. And he is really stepping it up. I think you made some comment about watch out for that happening, over the last several games of the season. And I think we're going to see it. And quite frankly, I mean, I'm looking at the rest of the schedule. It's a hard schedule. I agree with you. I don't think we're going to do better than 9th. A lot of road games against good teams other than Charlotte, who have been playing better lately.
They have been.
And
they got blown out tonight, though.
They did. But I don't even care that much about the playoffs. Like, I watch what the product that we have on the floor now, and I still wish we had decided to tank and that we were sellers, not buyers at the trade deadline. I'm still sour that we lost that second round pick this year and next year's first. I do like Jakob Poeltl. I think he's been great. He did some great videos on how he's been great, but tonight we saw like he's no Marc Gasol going up against Embiid. Although to be fair, I think Embiid's better than he was in 2019, and I think
he's way better.
Yeah,
but
and
I still think a prime Gasol would be a great matchup on an Embiid.
Right.
Gasol's understanding of angles is, like this is not offense to Jakob Poeltl. I agree with you. He's been absolutely incredible, and he is very good at understanding angles. And just listening to him talk about the difference between setting a screen, I think this was like in the pregame or in the day off yesterday. He did an interview where he talked about setting a screen for Scotty versus setting a screen for Fred. And just listening to it, like you're smiling, you're thinking, gosh, he is so smart. And I'm so happy that Christian Koloko has a guy like this to bounce ideas off of, not to mention Jamal McGlure. This is good. But there are definitely levels to this. And Marc Gasol, was a savant with the basketball and also defensively. He just really understood Embiid. He understood the scouting on him. He understood, exactly where he was going to go before he was going to go there. It wasn't a physical thing, obviously. Gasol at that age, to be able to do that to him, it really reminded me of going up against my ex-girlfriend's dad, who was like a really good basketball player back in his day. And I thought I was going to beat him 11-0. I was like, I'm going to kill you. I'm in shape. I'm so good at basketball relative to, even though you were way better in your prime and you played professionally, I'm going to destroy you. I struggled to score 4 points against this man. I mean, he had a massive reach advantage over me. He was bigger than me, but he just played angles so well. He knew where I was going before I was going, and I was just like, oh my gosh, he's 50. This is embarrassing. I build this as I was going to beat him 11-0, and he just beat me to the spot. And then when it came to his turn, he had a 45-pound advantage on me. He took me in the post, and it was just that's how Gasol played basketball. He was the old man,
Yeah. And I do think too. I mean, to be fair to Poeltl, I think Gasol had a better team defensively supporting him as well.
Oh, so, great, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, having Poeltl cover Embiid tonight, he's sort of on an island a bit. There's anyway, and as you described, Embiid as a load, right? So, but I do think this when we go up against a team like the Sixers, there's just such a huge talent gap, and we're going to see that against Boston as well, and Milwaukee. Although we play Milwaukee well, but there's just that talent gap, and I do think too when like and I'll use the air quotes, your best players, um, you know, put in the kind of game that Siakam and especially Fred put in tonight. You can't expect to win. Um, and I thought, with both those guys, like it's just the decision making. Like I mean, I know that
Yeah.
Pascal sort of disappears in the moment. When the game's on the line, he kind of shrinks, and I know that 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 Fred is streaky and shooting, and he's a bad defending on the ball. Good help defender, but doesn't defend on ball well. But like, it's the decision making. You'd expect your most experienced players would make better decisions, and um, their propensity to just decide before the play is developed what they're going to do and then attempt to do it. And to drive, like for Van Vliet to drive to the basket against two defenders that are bigger than him, and look off and open. I can't remember who was open, but
Ironically, it was Scotty.
it
And I
was
mean, like,
Scotty.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's just so funny because it's like on a night where Scotty kind of comes out and he just sort of, he's going through the motions and he's not being overly assertive, then they have an excuse not to pass him the ball. They'd be like, well, I
But
passed you
he
the ball
was
twice
he
and you
was
didn't do anything. He was going tonight,
ex-
and there was
yeah.
no reason to look him off. And, he shot 13 for 19. I genuinely believe this could have been maybe the first Scotty 28 attempt game, and you would have been better off for it, right? He was making quick decisions. I think he made that one, terrible pass to the referee, basically,
Yeah.
where OG moved over. You can always tell the wheels. Like, you can tell like what players are thinking if you watch the game slowly enough, or if you're good enough at what just experienced enough of watching basketball, you can sort of see like what the thought process was. So usually when there's a pass that's just totally off, or even when there's a shot that just should not have been taken, you're just like, when did he make that decision? And when should he have adjusted? you know, so sometimes, like, for instance, like Fred VanVleet will drive into the paint, and he'll draw a second defender, and he'll pass out to Precious Achua for a three, and you're just like, bro, like, that's exactly what the defense wanted you to do, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what you did. And
Yeah.
there's no thought process beyond the I'm collapsing and sending it. You're playing right into the defensive hand.
Yeah, like
But
he's not he's not playmaking. It's just a release valve. It's like it's at that point it's a hot potato and he's dishing it with no
exactly. And he
thought to
leaves
who
like
he's giving it to.
and
Yeah.
he leaves 3 seconds on the clock, and so
Mhm.
that guy has to take a shot. And at the end of the night, you're gonna be like, well, he had 8 assists, so he's so great. Raptors Republic did a great piece. It was an article by Samson Folk on Scotty's passing, and he broke down passes in terms of how they generate advantages and the accuracy of the pass, etc. And I suggest to anyone who hasn't checked that out by chance, because it was a very popular article, to just definitely go check that out, because it really does break down what is a pass in the NBA. Far too often, we credit assists for the most mundane, attempts at, passing the basketball, but it does help to understand, once a guy becomes more featured, the assists will always go up. Usage goes up, assists go up. Sometimes very terrible passers will have like a 5 assist season, and you're just like, how did this guy get 5 assists? Well, he dribbled the ball every single time. And some assists are just going to happen by osmosis. But it's interesting to see, like, with Scotty's assist numbers just climbing, and his playmaking expansion this year. Are we, a couple of years away from a 10 to 12 assist type of season from him? I certainly don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. If
No,
you run the offense through him, he'll get you 10, 12 assists every
I
single night.
agree.
And at that point, all this he's not a point guard stuff needs to go away, because he is. And tonight, the way he was running the paint, and I was just like, did Matt Devlin and Alvin Williams just compare him to Penny Hardaway and Magic Johnson? No, that's good. That's exactly where this should have
Yeah.
been going all along. But it was nice to see him show up for a big game, when his team needed him. But I believe you are right that Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet definitely do need to be a lot bigger in these moments. And I definitely think that, if they would just stop trying to be something that they're not and just kind of buy in, they're two of
Right.
the better, role players, second, third
Exactly.
option type of guys that you could imagine. But I don't see Siakam cutting without the basketball, cutting into gaps, screening, doing all that little stuff. It's basically like take the lead from your 21-year-old, best player tonight, which is just do all the little stuff to help you win. So many times tonight when, Fred would take a shot, Scotty dives right to the basket trying to get an offensive rebound, and he got a couple. That's a small way that you can help your team win, defensively, yeah. I just think it's all the small stuff. And too often I feel like some of your higher paid players think that they're too big to do some of the small stuff. And
Yeah.
it's just, it helps the offense. The bench was, usually I don't complain about the bench, but the bench did not give the Raptors a lot tonight. Um, I don't know. I think it's
I,
just it's a big it's first of all it's like a big gap to overcome to begin with, the gap between these two teams. I think Gary Trent Jr. probably could have helped tonight.
I agree. I agree. I
Yeah.
do think, I do think with the bench, like if you just look at the minutes, the starters were, most of them were over 40 minutes. And, some might say that's out of necessity. But you could also say that when you're playing your starters such heavy minutes and your bench never really gets a chance to sink their teeth into the game, they're going to be lousy when they come in because, you can't just get off the bench and in a game of this, like, a competitive physical game like this, you against a really good team, I don't think you can, you can just come in cold with no touches and then, but like, I don't know. I just,
Yeah.
again, that comes down to the coaching bit, and it's like, we
I
can
mean,
talk all night about that. But
84 minutes combined for Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam.
yeah,
Certainly, I don't think that was needed. And nor did they do any, sort of miraculous. Like it's not
no,
like the drop off is so drastic. And you're right, 7 minutes. And this kind of thing that sort of builds a sort of fear in your bench players. Oh, if I don't have a good stretch, I'm coming right out. And that's really hard to always look over your shoulder like that. I understand if the 10th guy in your team might be a variable where, you ride him and if he misses a couple shots, you take him out. I expect that from the 10th guy. But the 7th guy, the 8th guy, those guys can't get into a second half because they had a bad first half. I don't think Precious Achua got into the second half. I don't think Jeff Doughton got into the second half. He just it's forest from the trees, sometimes.
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand Nick Nurse is trying to win. I get it. I do. But if you have to win playing Scotty 41 minutes, OG 40 minutes, Pascal and Fred 42 minutes, what have you really won
yeah,
at that point, right? Like it just feels like sometimes, I look at guys like Daryl Morey, Sam Hinkie, and Nick Nurse, almost like weirdly enough as a trifecta sometimes of this sort of like what I consider like basketball genius, right? And there's this thing with genius where sometimes you miss something, but because you're a genius, you don't not always have the humility to go back and double check.
hmm,
And sometimes with Hinkie and with Daryl Morey, I always felt like they didn't understand people. Like there's a human component. Like yeah, you're losing games in order to rig the lottery, and you trust the process, this whole thing. But this residue of losing is going to be like really hard to wash out. There's a human component to this. Your fans are responding to this emotionally. And as a numbers person myself for most of my 20s, it took a very long time to retouch with, oh, right, this, how does this impact a human being? And so often I think, when you look at chemistry between a team, it comes down to all the soft stuff, like all the soft skills or the human stuff, how you approach certain guys, talk to certain guys. It has to be about more than just you miss two shots, you're out of the game. Like what is the
yeah.
consequence of that, to building that person's what did you think of Christian Koloko in the second half?
I thought Koloko gave us some good minutes. I thought I like he didn't play. He played Embiid better than Pirtle did. I thought, and I thought he gave some good minutes. He had, I thought, he had, he missed a bit of a bunny layup
That
on
seems to be the
a
case with him a
right,
lot.
but
Yeah.
again, I'm happy to see him on the floor, and I got, again, like I'll be honest with you. I'm torn between, wanting to win games and
Hmm.
get the eighth seed so we can, have the best chance of the in the play-in, or or the 7th seed even, but I think that's gone. The 8th seed would be great. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but but I'm also I like I kind of think, so what, we win the play and we get in the playoffs. Um, the only positive of that is that it just gives a guy like Scotty playoff reps, and because the team's not going to, it doesn't matter who they play in that first round, they'll be lucky to, to go to 5 games, I think. So, um, I part of it is like, just play the young guys and give them a chance, let them develop, like let them sink or swim with, like if Jeff Doughton, who's been really good, has a bad game tonight, well, hey, that's part of the price of developing Jeff Doughton, because I think he has a future with this team. And
I do too.
even though, like, like we're in the play and hunt and we want to, yeah, get the best seed possible, get that home court advantage, and I get all that, but like at the end of the day, it's I just don't see, other than, like financially, it's a couple of extra gates, and the big thing is it's just playoff reps for a guy like Scotty, who's the one that needs the playoff reps, and
Yeah.
and other than that, I could care less. My excitement, I think, for the last, what do we got, 6 games left of the season? My excitement is,
Yeah.
can we watch Scotty, like dominate games like he's done basically 2 in a row? He's been the best player on the team. Can we see that, for the rest of the season? And then I'll be super excited for can't
Next
wait for
season.
next season, and I'll be like
Yeah.
watching all the Rico Hines runs and getting my fix during the summer. And then, like I'll, then you and I can go watch him next season. But like, it's,
Yeah.
it's just, I'm kind of at that point. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
I don't
I
really know
mean,
what to
look,
make
like
of it.
I think one of the things I admired so much about Brian's interview was he said we're not conceding the season,
Hmm.
right? Like there's a real you're an athlete, right? And one of the things that perhaps, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I've never been an athlete at your level. So when you're putting in those development reps, especially to implement, additional strength in a certain thing or additional like adding a new skill set, it's a little bit like filling a cup, slowly, slowly, slowly. You don't know when it's going to be full, but at
Hmm.
some point, something snaps, it clicks.
Yep.
I've seen this with Brandon Ingram. I've seen this with Jason Tatum. I've seen this with a lot of guys where they'll work on something and it'll be like shaky, shaky, shaky. And then one day it's just not shaky anymore. Right.
Yep.
And there's this idea that progress grows like, well, Scotty's going to go from like 27% to
It's not linear.
28%. It's never linear.
No.
It's like something has to click. And when it clicks, the entire, almost like the compendium of all that work that you've put in, it bubbles to a boiling point. It's like boiling water, exactly
Yeah.
like boiling water. It's not boiling and then it's boiling. It's just lukewarm. It's lukewarm. It's boom, it's boiling. And I think with Scotty, there's so much skill development work that has gone in over the last 2.5 years. There's counters, dribbling stuff that he's, trying to get into different places on the court. There's the touch around the basket. There's counters in the post. There's mid range, turnarounds, all this work. And I've talked to trainers where they're like, no, one skill set at a time, one at a time, because most trainers work with role players.
Right.
You're working with Tim Hardaway. You want him to get the corner three down. Then you want him to get the pull up midi down. Then you want him to get the shot coming off the curl. You don't want to overwhelm most people, but Scotty's not most people, and a lot of players are like this. LeBron James did not just work on one thing at a time. Luka Doncic didn't just work on one thing at a time. There are some guys who do that, and we sometimes assume that that general rule is for everybody, and it's not. But at some point, all of these little skill sets are going to morph into a player. And I think
Yeah.
some of us have been wondering, where is it? Like, because, it gets messy. You
Yeah.
start, like, you think about like a player like Scotty from last year, his role to this year, some of us will look at the numbers and say, well, 15 points per game is 15 points per game. This is the same player. He didn't grow at all. And sure, we look at a guy like who's gone from 16 points a game to 18 points per game on the season and be like, that guy grew and Scotty didn't. But so many, like this player that I'm watching right now, this turnaround midi, I think he did it 3 times. No point last year was this a staple of his game. The ways that he's scoring are totally different. The way he's being guarded is totally different. His role as a playmaker on this team is totally different.
Yep.
So I think this is one of those like things where you're not going to see the progress, and then one day you're going to snap, you're going to open your eyes and be like, he's a 22, 8 and 8 guy every night.
I agree with you, and I actually think we're witnessing that transformation now. Because it's one thing to develop all these skills in practice. It's another thing to be able to use them consistently and successfully in a game situation, right? Because game speed's faster. It's about seeing the game, knowing where to use what. The game slows down for you. Your confidence grows, and we're already seeing that these things are beginning to look easier for him. Whether it's the turnaround midi or whether it's his ability to get the ball and move it with like a pinpoint pass to the perfect read it's at a place now where it wasn't 20 games ago consistently. And players have good games and bad games, but I think we're seeing that transformation. And that's exactly, like in my sport, I can remember trying to break 4 minutes for 1,000 meters. And all of a sudden I did it. And then it was like every race, I was 4 minutes in 1,000 meters, and you just go in these plateaus and you just sort of figure things out. And then all of a sudden that's the player you are. And I think we're witnessing that now. And that's what I'm really excited about for the next 6 games. And then, if there's playoff basketball or there's playing and then playoff, I hope to see that, when the intensity ratchets up even a little bit more. But I'll tell you something in comparison, like our 2 best players, like we don't, the capacity for that development is not in those guys. They're operating at their ceiling now in comparison. And that's why I'd say give the keys to Scotty already and let's get on with it.
I think, I wonder if 10, 12 years from now, you and I will have this conversation and we'll say, I'm really glad he had to go through this in his second year. I'm glad that he had to work for this, that it wasn't like a Jalen Green situation in Houston where unappointed, unannounced, he just comes in and just says, I'm the man and no one questions it. And suddenly he's got 25 shots a game, fuck up as much as you like.
Yeah.
I don't first of all, I think Scotty's a winner and I think he'll always be a winner. So I don't necessarily think that that's going to breed terrible habits, but I do wonder if all of this frustration, self-doubt, maybe, I don't think self-doubt has ever crept into him, but this potential for self-doubt, this criticism, all this stuff is good for a player long-term because it does, look, in these early years between the ages of, I want to say hone in 14 to 25. This sort of like the gaps and jumps for a player can be astronomical. And you see this partially because of how the mind is still growing at that age, but I think also the body and the mind body growing at the same time. Scotty Barnes physically and mentally at 21 is not the same player at 25. 25 to 28, the gap is not that big. It's just not that big. And so when you talk about, the different pathways to growing a player at this age, you really could take their development in one of several ways. You can definitely park him down in the post and turn him into a post scorer, or you can put him in this absolutely horrible offense where nothing easy comes for anybody and just say, go do whatever the hell you want and try to score despite the fact that there's someone in your way all the time and people aren't passing the ball. And it's going to force you, I think, to just even be competent. You have to be so good in this offense to even succeed. I mean, look at how Will Barton, his numbers from Washington, which is not by any means a good team, how they have plummeted on this team, and conversely, so there's nothing really easy. I mean, sure, I very much could see a situation where Scotty plays for the Lakers, and LeBron has a healthy season and he's playing next to LeBron in the power forward role next to AD. and he has like 22 of the easiest points a game ever.
Hmm.
And people will be like, oh, he's an emerging star because he's averaging 22 points per game. But it's super easy.
Yeah.
Everything he's getting right now is hard. It just, he's making it look easy. And I think the one big thing that I noticed from last year to this year is last year, it didn't look super easy for him. There was a lot of like really, like he would try to get separation and he just got it by a guy. Right now, when he's doing this mid-range turnaround, there
Yeah.
isn't a
Yeah.
defender within 3 feet of
Right.
him. Like he's
Right.
shedding him clear. And a couple of those middies that he did tonight, they were like very Kawhi-esque. The
Yes.
separation, the
Exactly.
bump, everything. You could tell he's really worked on this, and I saw him working on this offseason, and I was like, man, when he implements this, I know it hasn't looked pretty. And early in the season, I was like, Brian, like he needs to stop shooting these mid-range shots. Like they're so bad for him. He needs to park his ass out on the three until he figures this out in practice. And then for a while, that was right around when his season turned around. He went straight into the low post and started dominating for that entire quarter. But it was like I had such conflicted thoughts about that month where he played so well because I was like, long term, I actually prefer him to struggle as a mid-range assassin and a predator wing as opposed to thrive as a power forward center. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can deal with 14 points playing that way versus 20 points playing the other way because long term for his development, the forest from the trees argument is always going to be in the favor of Scotty's development because at the end of the day, if we're winning championships here, it's not going to happen without him. There's not one
Hmm.
player on this team other than him that projects as a number one or even number two option on a championship team like long term.
Right.
So yeah. And finally, this Nick Nurse thing, you heard the clip.
Hmm.
What'd you make of it?
Well, I do believe that things run their course, and that sometimes you need to change. And I also believe that sometimes in sport you get stale. You get stale with the team you're on. You get stale with the coach you're training with. You get stale with in the environment you're in, and a change can totally regenerate you and reinvigorate you. Um, like I think he's a good coach. But I also think that he's a good coach with a certain type of team, and the team that he's coaching now isn't the team that he had that he coached to a championship or that he won Coach of the Year with the following season. I
Is
think
there a
he's a
team around the league that you think he would fit really well on? Just off the top of your head. It doesn't matter if their coach is on the firing block or chopping block or not. Just if
well.
you think
I
Nick Nurse, this team, this would work.
I just think like on a veteran team, like an experienced veteran team, like it's easy to see drop him into a great team, okay, Golden State, they've
Milwaukee?
struggled this year. Milwaukee, he'd do great on. Golden State, he would be great with, I think.
Hmm.
Um, where he's got experienced players who know what they're doing, who he can,
Hmm.
but like the leadership on the floor more than because the Raptors don't have the leadership on the floor because Fred
Yeah.
VanVleet is not a leader, and neither is Pascal Siakam. They're the best leaders, Scotty Barnes, but the other players in the team, I think, are increasingly looking at him as a leader, but the two leaders don't look at him as a leader. I just think that, um, um, I think that's the type of team that he thrived with before with the Raptors, and I think that's the type of team that he would thrive with now. I don't know how all that great development happened with the Raptors previously, that developed OG, that developed Fred, that developed Norm, that developed Pascal, because I don't see that happening with
I think he could
with
be a development coach.
Nick Nurse as the coach. But
Right.
or maybe he's just torn between now he's the head coach. It's like win now. I have to win now, and therefore
Yeah.
I can't develop.
See,
But
that's the problem. Like you give a guy like this, a carte blanche type roster, like the one he coached with the Iowa Energy, right? Or,
mm,
in the G League or you give him that sort of rotating wheelhouse of guys, he's going to thrive in that environment because he's very creative, extremely creative for a head coach. I've talked to a lot of head coaches. I've talked to at least three of the head coaches who've coached for the Toronto Raptors. And I tell you, creativity is like an amazing quality in a head coach, and he has it in spades. He is a very creative coach. Problem is, there's a couple of variables, or at least three variables in his lineup that are just unaltered, unchangeable, and unquestionable for him. And I think that clouds his vision a lot.
Hmm.
I do wonder if there's a little bit of burnout. I mean, look, the pandemic is not um was not easy on anybody. Okay,
No,
like
and in
different
particular
degrees. Exactly.
for
And
the
I mean,
Raptors, it would have been harder on him than any other coach in the NBA.
absolutely. Playing in Tampa, then playing without fans, this was
Hmm.
tough. And he overloaded himself heavy. And I worried about that a lot, actually, because as someone who overloads myself a lot, and I will sometimes take on three, four things until I burn out, crash, and then sleep for 4 days, he reminded me of that. Not saying he reminded me of myself. That would be a very generous compliment to myself. But in a lot of ways, coaching Canada basketball, coaching the Raptors, he's such a hard worker. You just wonder at some point if he's just out of ideas because his brain is just tired. He also, is doing his continuing education, which is such an inspiring thing, and I will always, respect him for sharing that part of his journey. Wrote a book. Like, my God, he's maximizing all of this, right? But the problem is, ride like lightning, you're gonna crash like thunder. It's just always gonna be that way. Every human being has their limits, and I think this would be a really good refresh year. I'm not writing him off as a head coach ever. I have a lot of respect for him. As a basketball mind, just like I have a lot of respect for Daryl Morey, and I like
Right.
anyone who thinks outside the box.
So
They're very smart people, but smart people do burn out. It
so
happens.
I agree. I agree. Just imagine and think, um, what might he have been like as a coach, or what might his team been like
Hmm.
if the Raptors at the trade deadline, say they were sellers instead of buyers, and say they dealt Fred and Pascal, and they, think of like the Rudy Gay trade on steroids, and they bring
Yeah, they get
back
back
a
Dyson
bunch,
Daniels,
they
yeah,
right,
those guys.
right, like a bunch of young, energetic players that want to play,
They
that
might have
want
been
to do stuff.
better.
And then you have a creative guy like that. He gets reinvigorated because he's got these new bodies to work with. He doesn't have like this this status
Yeah,
quo by these franchise icons who won a championship, that are
yeah.
the team leaders, that are, one playing for a contract and the other playing because he wants to be known as a top five player. And he can try crazy shit with this, this young, exciting lineup. And I bet you would have seen Nick Nurse at his mad genius best.
I
But I
definitely think that this is the beef of not the beef. This is the meat of the conversation that you and I have had right there. I hope that if anyone has made it to this point of this conversation, this is the part that you could look at and say, yes, in a somewhat hilarious turn of events, the Raptors traded Rudy Gay in order to lose games and reversed it by and ended up winning games because it was in fact, I hope a documentarian one day just documents how that happened, statistically, analytically, how it happened, because what we fundamentally saw in Rudy Gay was what was wrong with the NBA in general, which is that we elevated high volume isolation scorers to a pedestal, and we downgraded and somewhat overlooked the value of high IQ role players, which is what John Salmons and Gravis Vasquez and guys like who actually came back were. They were winning players. And I think that guys like Dyson Daniels and Trey Murphy the third, and even a guy like Jonas Valanciunas, like there's so many guys who fit that sort of mold. And had Nick Nurse been forced to coach a team, I'm sure he would have kicked and screamed, because he loves Fred and Pascal. But had he been forced to coach that team, I really think we would have seen We the North Part 2. I
Yeah.
really genuinely do. And, the problem with timelines and reality is we can never reverse and say what would have happened. What would have happened if the Houston Rockets had drafted Michael Jordan first? Well, maybe Hakeem wins those 6 rings. We don't know. We
Yeah.
can only
Yeah.
guess.
Right.
Maybe Michael Jordan retires ringless as, a
Yeah.
stat padding choker not choker, stat padding, loser who won
Right.
all the scoring titles but never met Phil Jackson. We don't know what happened on a different timeline, but we can only guess and assume based on the information we have. And the information I have on Nick Nurse coaching, I'm talking 20 years of coaching, not 5 years of coaching, but 20 years of coaching, is he's a very imaginative coach. And when you put the pressure and the noose on him, to say, okay, well, Fred's got to get paid. Like listening to Fred VanVleet yesterday. Uh, it was hilarious, and I suggest to anyone who's kind of checked out on this season, if you want a snippet of just the ridiculousness and honestly, Talking to Strangers ties so well to Fred VanVleet, Malcolm Gladwell's book, Talking to Strangers, about the art of believing people and why we believe certain people and why natural skeptics end up being right so often. Listen to him talk, and he says, Pascal's looked like a top 5 player to me, and then in the same breath says I'm his biggest critic. Like, completely divorced from reality in all senses. Like, no one, not even his biggest fan, not even his propaganda channel on Twitter, is going to argue right now that he's a top 5 player or a top 10 player. But here you have this guy in the same breath, because obviously, some people are just, as I said, they're divorced from reality. They have no sort of semblance of like, wait, how does what I'm saying reflect how I actually feel? No, this is the right thing to say in this moment because I am a politician. Pascal Siakam, top 5 player. Pascal Siakam deserves all NBA. He's been great for us. And it's like, yo, like, this is the problem with this team in a nutshell. You got one guy who enables another guy who enables another guy, and they're just all enabling each other. You're a great coach. It's the players. It's the bench. You're a great superstar, Pascal. It's the bench. And it's like, you find a scapegoat that's not really the scapegoat. You're never going to solve your problems. The reality is that someone needs to have a conversation with all these guys and say, Nick Nurse,
Exactly.
you fucked up. Okay, Fred VanVleet, you are not him. Siakam, dropped the top 5 shit.
Yeah.
Until you can make a fucking, there was a stat the other day. All players, did you see it? All players in the NBA go ahead bucket in the fourth quarter or overtime. Pascal Siakam shooting 9%. This is literally the worst in the NBA. It is unimaginable to be this bad in the clutch and then still maintain some sort of semblance of top 5, top 10 superstar status. Increasingly, ESPN, TNT, all these, people that cover the NBA, they talk about the Raptors like this is a team without any superstars and any stars. They not even really talking about Siakam or VanVleet as a star. And I think that's fair. Relative to where we started the season, I think all this season has done is sort of hopefully demystify that a little bit,
Right.
so that we can get to a point. Because look, I talked about it in the last live, and I suggest anyone who wants to go through that last live, definitely there was a lot of golden nuggets there. But one of the things I talk about is offensive disruption, and superstars tend to disrupt offenses always. And Michael Jordan, there's plenty of questionable shots in his history. Same thing with Kobe. Same thing with Kawhi. Same thing with Kevin Durant. These guys, they operate above the rules, but for good reason. They're superstars because they're better than the team offense. That's just them taking that shot is probably better than some guy taking an open corner 3, and that's until that's still the case, then they should get a pass on a couple of bad shots a night, because some guys are just really that good. And I was watching Joel Embiid tonight, and I'm like, man, there's a couple of shots he took where I was like, he could have made a pass to that guy, but that's freaking Joel Embiid. He's shooting 60% true shooting on the season, or 63% true shooting. I have no complaints about this guy taking any shots. He take whatever the hell he wants. But that element of Siakam's a superstar, Joel Embiid's a superstar, so they should both be able to do that. That's the problem, because there's an 8 to 9% gap in their efficiency. And that 8 to 9% gap is the difference between basically a superstar and a role player. And that's the problem. So when people say like, Rob, you're hating on Siakam, you keep talking about him not being a superstar. Yo, it's because if you talk about this guy like a superstar, you can't even have the conversation. We can't even start the conversation until we defeat that idea of him as a superstar, because if he's a superstar, then everything I'm saying is wrong. He should be able to take those shots. Every low light film that I've ever made, if he was actually a superstar, most of those shots are actually good shots, but he's not. It's like talking about Malachi Flynn like he's Michael Jordan. It's just not. It's not even close to reality. So I think it's like a step-by-step process. As a fan base, we have to probably come together and kumbaya at the end of the offseason and be like, Fred fans, Scotty fans, Siakam fans, we as a fan base are almost as divided as this team is at times, and it feels like we're warring with each other, when it's at the end of the day, anyone who's still watching this product right now must be a serious diehard, because this has not been a fun season to watch.
Exactly.
So hopefully we can all just come together, shake hands at the end of the season, and just say, look, whoever gets traded, whoever comes back, doesn't come back, let us hope going forward that we can see a better product on the court. Whoever is coaching this team next year, hopefully they can do a better job with this. And if it's Nick Nurse, then hopefully this summer he takes some time off like really just to reflect on his priorities and what he's trying to do at this point, because I think he's a very gifted mind. But yeah, I think he needs a break. But yeah, it has been a great conversation with you, Larry. I really appreciated it.
Yeah. Cheers, Rob. Thanks so much. And
have a great night.
You too. Okay. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay. Let's quickly go to Chad by FVV, and then we'll go to Coach Mo, and then your goat. What's up, Chad? Hello? Hello? Chad by FVV?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What's up?
Oh, there you go. Sweet. Larry is his name, right? The last guy?
Mm-hmm.
Love that guy. Amazing.
Me too.
One of my favorite guests you have on the show, so no problem waiting for him to go. Well done.
Who are your top 5 guests? Not to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious.
It's Chad B, by the way, so I probably already shouted out the Kings guy. Also shout out to the Kings clinching. I don't know who the other 3 would be, but those. The lovely lady that comes on every now and then. What's her name again?
Tamberlin?
Yes, okay. I like her too. She's fun. Probably cool. The Tatum guy as well. He's just fun as well.
Clutch Tatum has never come on ever. Clutch Tatum,
he's just in the chat.
He's just in the chat.
He's just hilarious in the chat.
Yeah, Clutch Tatum messaged on Instagram once. Yo, you should call in sometime.
You really should. Yeah. He's hilarious in the chat. Then the brothers, I guess. Yeah, for sure. I'll combine them as one.
FA and Paul.
Yeah.
They get linked. No love for Coach Mo. He's gonna yell at you.
Oh fuck! I'm sorry. Yeah, Coach Mo. Yeah.
No, okay. I guess we're saying like our guests are fantastic. I love the guests on the show.
You guys got great guests. Yeah, 100%.
Yes, we do. Anyways, what's going on? What'd you think of the game?
Nice
name, by the way, Chad by FVV. I love that.
I figured I'd extend the B a little bit. Yeah, so you already went over a lot of my points I wanted to get into, but there's a few things I wanted to hit on for tonight. Sure. I missed almost all of last week because I was on vacation, so I tried to comment and like all your videos. I was Cuba. It was
Cuba.
Beautiful.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, man. So I missed a couple of games, came back, and this is the first game I was able to watch and commit to. And oh my God, it was hard. As you probably got the notification, I was commenting start the stream early because I was done at the halfway point. But there's a few things I want to hit, and it really comes down to, and you mentioned this, and I love the fact that you mentioned there is really a mental block with Fred and facing Philadelphia. There's something there that he's trying to get over. You worded it nicely. I don't remember the exact terminology you used.
Said he was exercising his demons.
There it is. There's the terminology. Yes, 100%. Maxey comes down, drives, blows past him, puts up a layup. Fred decides to go back the other way, not look at anyone, try to pass by one, run into 2 other players, throw up a ball that almost hits the countdown clock and misses the net entirely. Lies on the floor because he didn't draw a foul, and then all of a sudden it's a 5-on-4.
Flop. You almost said flop.
I almost said flop.
That's a Freudian slip. I caught it.
You're not wrong. But he was trying to draw a foul, and he just lied there. He didn't go back, so now it's a 5-on-4, and then it's a 2-on. It's a 2.
Can I ask you a question, Chad?
Yeah.
Okay, so prior to this year, how closely did you watch Raptor games? I'm just curious. You're like a litmus test for me because you're one of our earliest subscribers. And I'm just curious if this channel has had any impact at all, because the way that you're describing this game, I'm like, man, he's not watching the ball. This is interesting. I'm curious. Have you always had such a keen eye for this, or has something changed? Or are you slowing?
This will be shout out to your channel because this channel does open your eyes to a lot of other things. Also,
I was fishing for a compliment and I got it. I'm
oh hell yeah! If you wanna kind of a slap compliment, you are officially a meme on Reddit as of an hour ago. Yeah, someone used a picture of yourself to describe how they're feeling about the game, and I was like, well, yeah, like okay, but yeah, so I guess people are feeling the same way you've been feeling, so they're finally admitting it.
No. What does the meme say?
It's just a picture of you. They're just like, oh, I'm feeling like this or something like that, and it's a picture of you. It's nothing bad, honestly. It was just funny. I was like, oh, that's hilarious. But no, I used to be pretty big into football during the season, and my team was the Falcons, and then Brady destroyed us after the biggest upset in NFL history, and I was like, I'm switching back to the Raptors. So it was like 2019, 18, 17, something like that. And then I got in a little bit more, and then your channel really pushed me to really focus on the Raptors, and I put a large bet on Scotty after, I think it was game 2 or 3 last season. After you did the Celtics, I put a large bet on him to win Rookie of the Year. And that just made me focus on the team more. And I found your channel. I got obsessed with the channel. And then I was like, oh, this channel's the only channel that talks the truth about this team. So I've been following you pretty hard.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, 100%. And then the other thing was like, again, Maxey, he should not be playing against them. Push off on Maxey. Like, yeah, he's just upset that he's not as good as it. And he draws a foul. And then there was another one where Maxey has a 3. Fred comes down and like with 22 seconds on the clock, 3 from like extra 3 feet out of the range. Like,
I can't believe we have gone an hour and 10 minutes and not discussed Scottie Barnes' 360 dunk.
Oh yeah, well he's done it twice now.
My
he
reaction
said it himself. He's
to
like,
that
he's like, if you're
genuinely,
gonna get it, you're gonna have to show off a little bit. He's making fun of the team.
You're
Why would
down
he
10 points on the road, and you have the guts to pull off that dunk. I think that took balls.
Well, he called out his other teammates. If he's gonna call out his teammates for not making a good dunk on a breakaway, he's gonna have to do it to back up his talk. So,
but I think, this is what's been missing from this team. Okay, like when you go back to PJ Tucker, you go back to even DeMar DeRozan at times, Serge Ibaka. There's a sort of toughness. I don't want to call it an enforcer, but it is a sort of attitude, and an attitude that a winning team has to play with, right? Not quite Joel Embiid airplanes, but something along those lines of confidence. And I got to tell you, whether you do it as a stoic cyborg like Kawhi Leonard, or whether you do it like a petulant child like Joel Embiid, that evokes a sense of pride and confidence in your team. And I think that, if you're a Raptors player, there are certain plays that probably deflate your sense of hope for the outcome of this game. And there are certain plays that sort of make you feel like, I believe. And I think Scottie Barnes on a breakaway down 10, 12 points, whatever, on the road, doing a 360 really shut that crowd up. Like, there were some people who just like, oh yeah, like I immediately lost my mind. I was like, woo! I went like straight to the Ric Flair. I did it 5 times. I was like, that's crazy. I mean, again, if you did that at home, I expect it, right? But to do it on the road, especially when you're having a great game, when your team's not, playing well, I think it's a big boost in the arm for your team, because it shuts their crowd up. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was good.
100%. No, at least there was a little bit of an entertainment factor. We did have a comeback. I knew it wasn't going to close out, but whatever. I'll let someone else take the next call, because I think most of the other points were taken over. I needed to just kind of come in there and really say, like, Fred shouldn't have played against Maxey. Like, we know he can't play against Maxey. I don't understand. Like,
Maxey's not a good defender. That's the crazy part. Like, people rip him for his defense all the time. He's a terrible defender, and he really is. I know he looks like a good defender because he's twitchy, long, and I don't know.
The matchup versus Fred just doesn't work, man. Like, he's
Fred's a terrible defender. There's more to defense than point of attack stuff. No, but Fred exercising his Philly demons. This goes right back to Shake Milton in the frigging, in the playoffs in 2019. Like, he could not score. And I mean, yeah, like, look, the most important thing about this is he is defensively compromised massively against guys like Harden, Maxey, especially, because those guys are dynamic off the bounce and they can really expose him. He is, I hate to say it, almost lucky that he was injured last year. So we can all say, oh, well, it's because he was injured. He had mobility issues, whatever. This guy, I had been seeing, look, when Kyle Lowry, the year before Lowry left for the Miami Heat, I was like, his defense has slipped massively. There were gaps that I used to see him close pretty accurately, which he was suddenly leaking a bit. Lowry's offense has never been super efficient. He's never been a great scorer ever, right? But that defensive, glue guy stuff that he used to be able to do so comfortably, I saw it slipping in Tampa, and I was like, it might be time to move on from Kyle Lowry, even though I'd love to have him back. With Fred, I'm seeing that happen now. And I saw it happening last year towards the end of the half where, look, you go back to see Fred VanVleet in the G League 5-6 years ago or whenever that was. He's quick. I mean, quicker than he is now. And he's a good player. He's a really good player. Like, I didn't love him. Like, I liked DeLon Wright more than him back then, but he's a really good player relative to where he is now in terms of mobility east west. But when you see like how these guys like can shed him, you're just like, injured or not injured, back or no back, he has no chance
Yep.
keeping either of these guys in front of him. And then the problem is, if he cross matches with a center or a power forward in transition, he's selling. Like, he's just going right, guys. So who the hell can he guard? And you put him out there for 42 minutes a night is like George Niang. I understand his help defense is way better than Niang's ever will be. I understand he's still technically a positive defender, but it is hard for me to imagine that this is not going to get spammed in the playoffs, because you would just set pick after pick and just wait for someone to get him in the post or to get him on a, like, he can't guard anywhere. One-on-one, he can't guard in the post, right? And he can't guard on the
Nothing
perimeter.
from the perimeter. No. Yeah,
So
100%.
unless you stick him on like a non-shooter, like we are at a point now where a guy who routinely shoots 35% of the percent from the field and is often tunnel visioned and disrupts the offense is now also a defensive liability that you actually have to hide, like Luka Doncic, Trae Young. Like, I mean, obviously this is hyperbole. I'm stretching it. He still makes a lot of positive contributions, but like the analytics tell you he's a positive defender, but you know who has a better defensive box plus minus than Fred VanVleet this year? Raptors point guard.
who didn't really show up tonight, so it was hard to replace him with.
Yeah, Jeff Doughton Jr. 0.9. I don't know what it's going to look like after tonight. Small sample size, but yeah, he has a higher defensive box plus minus than Fred VanVleet. So yeah. Anyway, Chad, always nice to hear from you. Thanks for calling in, man.
Take care of yourself, buddy. Bye.
See ya. Bye. All right, time to spit fire with Coach Mo. Coach Mo, what's up?
Can you hear me?
I can. You always ask me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, I have headphones on, so anyways, it was funny at the end of the game. If you were listening, Matt Devlin just congratulated Fred for 200 threes after his fourth quarter, so I thought that was funny.
That was hilarious. Yes.
Yep, going 3 for 10, but let's congratulate him. When you talked about, one thing I noticed in this game that you mentioned was, I knew they were going to attack Fred. I knew Harden and Maxey were just going to search up Fred. But it's like every night in the point guard matchup, the opposing point guard can score on Fred pretty easily, and Fred struggles to score on whoever. It's like, it's crazy. Like, and you mentioned it, Maxey is a horrible defender, and he can stay in front of Fred. That was hard to watch.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of shocked, but
Fred's too heavy, man. I think it's just, I think at this point, it's just, he needs to get a lot lighter. Like, a lot of players experience this with age, where they just realize they need to get lighter in order to be quicker. And he's always looked a little heavy to me. Always. I realize that that's grown man strength and all this stuff, whatever, but he needs to get in better shape. Like, I know this, again, it sounds crazy. We're not talking about Kyle Lowry here, but like, my God, like, there's no way that a guy at 28 should be slowing down this much. He hasn't played a tremendous amount of minutes either. He came to the league late, right? He was a bench player for some. This is not like the wear and tear of a 12-year career. This should not be happening at this age. I understand that undersized guards tend to dip, but to be dipping this way defensively, like, this is crazy to me. And also, like, the diving and trying to sell fouls and then not getting back in defense has become a consistent issue for, like, what feels like 2 months now. At least twice a game. And he just lie on the fucking floor, dive into the crowd, and just not get back. And it's like, bro, like, stop. Like, who is it on? Is it on Nick Nurse for playing this guy for 42 minutes and he has to conserve his energy because he knows he's going to play 42 minutes? Well, then, Nick Nurse, stop it. Because those 5 minutes that he's so bad for you because he's conserving energy on defense or whatever, like, I don't know. It's hard to be critical of a guy who had to play 42 minutes, right?
Also, he didn't have to play 42 minutes. And when you talk about Nurse wanting to win, playing Fred 42 minutes tonight, you're not trying to win. You're not. And one thing that's interesting to me, I always wonder, in a lot of these games in the fourth quarter, what happens in when the team is in film session? Like, does Nurse doctor the tapes? Like, how does it? Do they just do they all turn a blind eye? Like, what happens
Um.
in these film sessions?
Okay, so I actually know. um. It's not as ruthless as you would expect. So it's not very individually based. It's not like, yo, Scotty, you fucked up here. Yo, Fred, you fucked up here. Yo, Pascal, you fucked up here. It's treated with kid gloves. It's like, here, we need to. There's a lot of we language is what I'll tell you. Like that I know for sure. Um, and a couple of times this season, there has been a lot of you language. Once in a film session, and then I believe once in a team meeting. And it's after those games that you've seen somewhat of a flip, a switch that's flipped. And I think this is just one of those engines that sort of fake starts and then just fizzles out over and over and over and over. Heard rumors at the trade deadline, right after the trade deadline, that Masai and Coach Nurse, they believe in this core, but the players don't. And yo, like sometimes rumors are like rumors, like whatever, whoever said it, team source, but you can see it. You can see it because if you genuinely believed this team had a championship, you would play for each other. You definitely would. Who doesn't want to win a championship?
Um,
But if you look at if you look at your leader, if you look at Pascal Siakam and you see him in practice, you see, like if you're an NBA player, imagine like you and I, we're not NBA players. Like we watch NBA players, we're not NBA players. Imagine you are an NBA player. You go and see a Joel Embiid. You see that dude up close. You play against him. You guard him. You go sweat to sweat, bow to bow with him.
mhm,
And then you go to practice and you see Pascal Siakam. You're supposed to believe that your guy can get past their guy. Like there are levels to this.
of
And
course.
there's a reason why genuinely teams that like people often talk about teams that didn't have a superstar and won. And I always say that those teams had a superstar, they just didn't play like one. Rasheed Wallace
Rasheed Wallace was the most talented player on that Pistons team, easily.
by far. And I remember people who watch maybe people who were born in the 90s or maybe people who were born like in the early 2000s or whatever, maybe the younger fans, they don't remember Rasheed Wallace and they look back and they say, well, what's the big deal about this guy? 15 16 points per game. What the fuck is the big deal? I've never won an NBA. Never won was never all NBA, never really, barely ever made the All-Star team. Like, why is he so great? And I will remember this game forever. It was Blazers, Lakers, Shaq and Kobe, super dominant, right?
Mhm.
And the Blazers just playing them down to the wire. And the commentator, I can't remember who it was, commentator, one of the classic commentators, might have been Ahmad Rashad or someone like that. And they said, they're complaining, the Blazers are complaining that, there's really nothing that they can do to stop Shaquille O'Neal. And then the commentator said, well, the Lakers are complaining there's nothing they can do to stop Rasheed Wallace. And it was true. It literally nothing. His release point, his just whatever
release
the fuck
point
he wanted.
was so high. It was crazy.
Yeah. He was so good. And that level of he had superstar talent. He just never had superstar offensive output. He was always on great teams. Great teams. Whether he won championships or not, Rasheed Wallace was on pretty much a title contender his entire career. And for good, and he was like the best player on that team for like 10 of those years. One of the most underrated careers
And he can
of
anchor
all
a
time.
defense. And he can anchor a defense.
And he can anchor your fucking defense. Probably should have. He was never about the numbers. Honestly, prior to Scotty Barnes, like when you asked me like who was my favorite player, Rasheed Wallace. Like for most of my life, Rasheed Wallace, Arvydas Sabonis. There's a lot of players that I really loved, but Rasheed has consistently and the answer has changed. At times, be like, okay, well, it's Michael Jordan. Well, it's like it's Tim Duncan, but if I did a sample of every single day from the time I was born till today, if you asked me every single day who is your favorite player, who's your favorite player, who's your favorite player, we did a tally of every single day. I think Rasheed Wallace would win all time. One of my absolute favorites. Loved that he kept it real. Loved that he was just never about the numbers. I remember one game, he was asked something about like he had like 28 points. They're like, "Do you ever think about going for 30?" He's like, "Why am I gonna do that? Why am I gonna do that? What does that do? Does that help my team? I don't care." Just really selfless guy. Never cared about the numbers. Just wanted to win. Always just cared about winning, and that's why he won. Detroit was a perennial powerhouse in the East. The Blazers were a perennial powerhouse in the West. Just unfortunate for him, Kobe and LeBron kind of got in the way. I think we need to look at him the same way we look at a Karl Malone or someone like that. To be honest, like maybe that's a little bit too much. Maybe Karl Malone is a little bit better, obviously, but like I think he's in that. I think he's in that conversation from a talent perspective. I think Malone just put up massive numbers, spamming pick and roll.
Can I speak to the Pascal supporters real quick? I just need to ask him a question. Were the Sixers double teaming Pascal or Scotty? Just a question. Because if I hear the double teams Pascal's getting, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose. When Milton is guarding Siakam, they don't care. They really don't give a shit. They're like, Agreed. Go ahead and take your step back twos all day. Take 20 of them. Milton's on Scotty. Embiid, run over there now, please. Please run over there now. Like,
I agree. Yeah, I mean, look, like tonight, like in I think in previous games they have stuck Niang at times on Siakam in his limited minutes, and I was surprised to find out tonight he only played 12 minutes, and Siakam abused him, right? But yo, like tonight they showed him different looks. They gave PJ Tucker that look, boom, air ball right away, right? So it's like, yo, but this is not a double team. It's just one dude. It's PJ Tucker. He's an undersized older dude in his like late 30s now, and you can't get past this guy. That's tough. I realize PJ Tucker is an amazing defender. I realize Joel Embiid is in the paint. I realize the Sixers have a lot of size. I was very impressed by the Sixers tonight. Like let's not take anything away from what the Sixers did, and I think the Raptors played them about as well as you could have hoped, apart from 3 to 4 implosions internally. I think this game could have been closer than it was. Maybe even like gone to an overtime if the Raptors had played right. But I do believe that the talent gap is just so big between their two best players and your two best players is it's insane. Like the level, like is Joel Embiid by himself better than Pascal and Fred combined? Yeah, he is. Is James Harden better than those two combined by himself? Probably. He's close. Like, yo.
Tonight he was.
Tonight, all season he's been great. People wrote him off. Like, look, I think one of these things that we need to acknowledge as NBA fans, not just Raptor fans. By the way, thank you, Quado from Mars. Ball don't lie. Both please. Sheed is a legend. I agree. I love Rashid. One of the things I think we don't acknowledge as NBA fans is what happens when information changes, but we don't adjust. We often will have a guy who has an entire year where he's fallen off, but no one accepts that he's fallen off, right? Same thing as when a guy takes a step up, we often are late to accept that change has happened because we do have an anchoring bias. We do assume this guy's a scrub. Like my perspective on Emmanuel Quickley and Jared Vanderbilt has to change. Regardless of where they were last year, they have taken a step up this year, and we need to acknowledge that shit has changed. There's sample size, there's evidence to say this has changed. Same thing with Siakam, Van Vliet, whatever. It's roller coasters of players, and I'm not saying flip-flop on a player every single day, but at some point, let the evidence show you. Don't, like, if Scotty comes out this year and does not show any progress at all for an entire year, yeah, it has to adjust shift your expectations. So I think, this year has been a very interesting experiment, not only in the resurgence of James Harden, not something you often see. A guy starts tailing off, with injuries and all that stuff in his early 30s and then has a complete resurgence here like this. It's not common, but we need to adjust how we're talking about James Harden. Because I'm not saying he's MVP James Harden right now, but he is damn close. Like he's doing whatever he wants on the court right now.
You know what my favorite moment of this game was?
What?
It was not the 360 dunk. The start of the fourth quarter, Barnes is in the post, and I think he tells it was a Boucher to clear out.
Yep.
He just tells him to clear out. he takes 2 dribbles and a mid-range fadeaway
Yes,
bucket
I
over
remember
Harden.
that. I love that.
Do you know
Yeah.
how many times I saw Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant do that, where they just say, "Can you leave so I can just take care of this guy who can't guard me? Just go to the other side, like you're in my way." I was like, man, it was just so beautiful to watch, man. It's just so beautiful to watch.
It's it's one thing to do that. Like, so that's something that Brian said with when we interviewed. He's like, look, I'm with him in the gym. He's making these shots. I know it's not like that's not the problem, right? It's about finding the angles to get these shots off in a game comfortably when you've never done it before. Scotty's never called his own number, gone
Yeah.
down into the post, taken I'm not saying never, but it's not a consistent part of his game. If you look at like how he was scoring last year, it's a lot of putbacks, a lot of drives, a lot of action off of scrambles. There's some post ups here, a little hook shot here, open shot here,
There's a
but
lot of
like
hustle buckets, a lot of hustle buckets.
a lot of that stuff, right? I mean, it requires talent for sure. Hustle is a talent because not
Yeah.
everyone does it. But like for real, like he wasn't flashing like Paul George skill set last year. There's nothing projectable there. I mean, so that's why like, when you start as an analyst, when you start saying he can do this, people are like, yo, like the Dennis Rodman, Draymond Green clone can become a Paul George, clone. Like how
Yeah.
how are you making this mental jump? But it's been really interesting to see that. And I agree. Look, I would, at this point, seasons, somewhat lost to the wind. I would much rather see us, Scotty go for the tougher, development shot. Because, look, this is all reps. Like,
That's
there's
all I was saying with the mid range. That's all I was saying. That's all I
no,
was saying.
you're right. You're right.
That's
And
all
look,
I was saying.
he's right too. Like I'm telling you earlier
That's
when I was
all I was
talking to Larry, like I said it, like I told Brian like in December he needs to stop taking this mid range shot. Like he just needs to stop because this has to be like he look at his percentages, they're terrible. It's not an efficient shot and he's not efficient at making it. But obviously the goal is long term. If you are a great player, you aspire to be a great player. This has to
was on
be
this team, if KD was on this team, yeah, don't take mid range shots if you're shooting bad. KD's not on this team. Siakam is. Get your reps, kid. Get your reps. And one thing I wanted to say about
That's funny.
Scotty needs to eliminate, below the free throw line, the little semi-dotted circle.
Yeah.
When Scotty's there and he's posting up, instead of doing his random half floater, half hook, he needs to just eliminate that from his repertoire altogether. And he needs to do a mini fadeaway with 2 hands from that area. Because oftentimes he's getting fouled. They're like hitting him on the arm because his arms are so long. They're not calling it.
This
He needs
takes
to.
reps though. You
Yeah,
know what I
but
mean? Like I'm
I'm
he's
just
20.
saying that's
Yeah.
a horrible shot. From that distance, like a hook shot from there, you're not Kareem. From that distance, he
His
needs to do a fadeaway.
percentages would suggest otherwise. His percentages on that shot
It's an
are actually
ugly
above
shot.
league average.
It's an
ugly
ugly
for
shot.
sure, but it's like
ugly.
look, like
And there's no angle. Like he can do that from the corners and he can bank it.
it seems crazy to say that he needs to get stronger, but he does. He needs to get even stronger than he is right now, which is
Do you know
crazy
who
because
needs
he's
to get
probably one of the
stronger?
strongest players on the team.
Do you know who needs to get stronger? The number one
Siakam?
candidate? No.
Christian Koloko.
Koloko. If you watch Koloko, I swear to God, sometimes maybe it's just visually on the television. His arms look bigger than his legs because he's wearing the black sleeves. Like he's wearing
Yeah.
the black. This dude,
He is very slight of frame, and I had not realized how slight of frame he was
Embiid-
until I saw him live. It was like, wow.
Embiid just constantly takes his legs out and then he falls forward on top. Like he can't go vertical against Embiid because Embiid just knocks him off.
Yeah.
But
No, I think look, Koloko, his touch around the rim has left a lot to be desired. It's not just strength; it's just straight up like he just does not shoot well at the rim. I mean, this is definitely going to have to be something that he works on a lot. But the package is there. The mindset, the brain, the attention to detail on defense, the switchability, the versatility, the package in terms of
yes,
his
the mind's
length
there.
and
The
switch.
mind's there.
He's got something.
By the way, the conversation you were having with the first caller,
Larry. Yeah,
Larry, yeah, Marc Gasol's a basketball genius.
he is.
Pirtle's high IQ. There's a difference.
Agreed. No, for sure.
Like,
And I mean, look, like
Marc
Jakob
Gasol's a supercomputer. Marc Gasol to me is a higher IQ than his older brother Pau. To me,
yeah, I think they're
and
close, but you're right.
Pau's high IQ.
I think like I remember Phil Jackson once saying that no one had ever picked up the triangle faster than Powell. So I
No,
think
Pau's
they're
really
both like
smart.
really smart
Pau's really
players.
smart.
But yes, you're right.
I
Like
think
there
Mark
are
is even
definitely
smarter.
levels to this, and like mentally speaking, like Marc Gasol, his brain, Kyle Lowry. If you could dissect, you just open them up and just kind of look at how their brain is processing information while on the basketball court. And this just reminds me of that neuroscience video that I have to do, but I'm just so busy to do with
But
Catherine. But
Mark,
like the mental element of basketball, is it's so underrated and underexamined. We look at numbers, we look at, made shot, missed shot. We don't know like what neurons we're firing and what ideas and thoughts we're going through. Sometimes like a young player will have a turnover and you're just like, great turnover.
yes,
Because
yes,
I can
yes.
see exactly what your idea was there, and I know with enough reps you're going to make that shot. And then sometimes you have a turnover where it's just like, that was a dumbass idea. It was a
But
terrible idea. It was a complete failure to calculate this and that. There's so many variables in the basketball court. So many variables. There's the shot clock, there's the score, there are your four teammates, there are the five opponents, and all of these variables together must be recalculated every second. Every second, because every second they all move. Every second the shot clock moves, right? The only variable that doesn't need to be recalculated is, the score, because that changes every 24 seconds. So there's a constant recalculation mentally. When people talk shut up and dribble, I'm like, you have no idea how smart some basketball players really are. They're
yes, yeah.
geniuses. But when I look at someone like LeBron, Draymond, Nikola Jokic, I'm not going to put Scotty Barnes in that conversation yet, but like Magic Johnson,
he could very easily be up there.
he could very
He
easily
just
be, and
needs
trust
more
me, he's right
experience.
there. He's
He could be more
right there.
experienced. Yeah,
So when I look at those guys, and Michael Jordan doesn't get enough credit for this. Him too. Him too. Generational mind for basketball. Like
He just
some people like to gloss over Jordan's genius because he didn't pass as much as the other guy. He was branded as selfish a lot. He was so athletic, and sometimes these things can become distractions. They can distract you from the genius. Typically when we talk about smart players, when we extend it out to Larry Legend or Magic Johnson or Nikola Jokic, typically our bias assumption when we talk smart players, Kyle Anderson, is usually unathletic. Typically, if a player can override their physical limitations to become great on the basketball court, we tend to give them credit for being smart. Marc Gasol is a great example of
But if
that.
Marc Gasol wasn't super high IQ, he wouldn't last. He's just too like if
I think he was an underrated athlete too, to be honest.
no, what I'm
Super
saying in
long,
his
super long arms,
when he
quick
came to
feet.
us, when he came to
hmm
us, he had to be in the right position a half step early because he couldn't cover ground as fast as he used to. He had to be really
Fair,
smart.
fair. But I remember watching Marc Gasol in high school because he was the younger brother of
And
Powell and
he
whatever.
was even heavier then.
He was so huge, but he was so quick. He was always quick. For his size, he was always quick. That's kind of like, I mean, I'm not comparing Kenny Lofton for the Memphis Hustle to Marc Gasol, but it's part of what I love about Kenny Lofton is sometimes you package a very rare and very unique skills, like physical attribute, in a very unconventional body type, and it can create for all sorts of rhythm disruption on the basketball court. And I think Kenny Lofton has some very interesting potential as a prospect
I
for
do.
that reason. So anyways, so I think in closing, I think this game was pretty much how it was supposed to go, and I'm very happy that Scotty got the reps as a guy. And there's only so many games like this that he can put up before everyone on the team just kind of wakes up to this and just says, okay, this is just our guy now.
Why do we
Um,
play one way through 3.5 quarters and then we just switch it up at the end? Like to me, I'm all about let's play the way we have to play to beat Milwaukee and Boston. Will this work against Milwaukee and Boston on a consistent basis? If the answer is no, let's stop spamming it.
so you're
That's the
suggesting taking steroids,
no. The reason why I
point
say that
shaving,
is
because
the
that's the
reason
only
why
way
I
you're
say
beating
that
those two teams, man.
no, but I remember when Nick Nurse first got the job over Dwayne Casey, he was like, the playoffs are in mind. We got to do things. We're going to experiment. We're going to do this and that. It was like I can't keep banging my head against the wall like Casey used to do. Right? I think that's one of the reasons
You're
why he got the
paraphrasing
job.
heavily, but yes, that's exactly the tone and exactly
Basically,
the meaning of what he
yeah.
was saying. Yes.
By the way, random side note:
Hmm.
Doc Rivers might be the most unlikable coach who complains. My God, Embiid elbowed Pirtle, and he's defending it.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, there are no coaches
That
in the NBA that I like less than Doc Rivers. None. Not even Steven Silas. Like honestly, Doc Rivers is on my all-time Hall of Fame most overrated coaches ever. I do not like it. Honestly, he prior to him, and we're gonna talk about coach of the year type of thing because I think this is Mike Brown's award to lose easily this year, and if it's not him, then it's probably shit, the guy in Utah whose name is I'm forgetting.
Will
Um,
Hardy.
Will Hardy. Um, but yeah, it's so interesting when we talk about coaches. Whoever wins Coach of the Year is usually the guy who outperforms expectations the most. You know, and that there's such a logical fallacy there because who's creating the expectations? We take that for granted that
By the
that
way,
person was right.
speaking of coaching, I swear to God, how many coaches at the time or today could have won a championship with that 2019 roster, given the circumstances of the Warriors
A
being
lot.
injured? A lot. To me, I think I've said this before on your show, but two teams, I swear that it almost didn't matter who their coach was. The '08 Celtics, that team could have coached themselves, and the 2019 Raptors. I
Yeah,
swear to God,
you have to look at teams like that and say, okay, a lot of
the
like
amount of
when
vets.
we like here's the thing. Let's say for instance you come.
Uh-oh.
Got it.
Okay.
Sorry about that, guys.
You
My
knocked
wire
something
fell and
over?
then
Okay.
disconnected my XLR cable in the process. My bad. I was just like, wait, can you guys hear me? My bad. All right. Sorry, what was I saying? Right. So imagine you come into the season and you have a team that is expected to win like 38 games, but then they
Mhm.
end up winning 54 games, right? Now, there's a lot of reasons that that could have happened. There could have been an unprecedented, boom in a particular player's performance. There could have been an unprecedented amount of luck. You just consistently played against teams that just sat their best players. You played a soft schedule. You played against, teams that were injured a lot. It could happen. It's very unlikely, but you could conceivably go an entire season and 80% of your opponents don't field a full roster. You just have to be lucky with the schedule. There has to be some sort of luck involved. So there's a million reasons why a team can outperform their preseason, or the people who did the predicting were just really bad at predicting. They underrated every single person on that team. Maybe there's a star on that team that's emerging. They didn't properly account for that. There's a sort of synergistic overlap between like, oh, they're bringing back a number of players. The Raptors, a funny thing, they brought back more players than any other team in the league. 13 returning players on this roster, very few additions. Their new additions really haven't even played. This is pretty much the same team as last year for the
Yep.
most part, with the exception of Jakob Poeltl, who is an old friend.
And our two
And
best players regressed. Our supposed two
yeah,
best players
and I
regressed.
mean, like you have had like relatively like to what we've come to expect from OG Anunoby, you've had a pretty healthy season from him, right?
Hmm.
You've had booms across the board. You've had a lot of guys play better. Some guys play it's the same. But there's nothing here that's like, oh my God, this guy shot 10% worse. Like Siakam's just having the worst season from hell. This is pretty much who he's been for the last 4 years. Started out really hot,
But
got really cold in the middle. This is kind of
what's
who he is.
what's confusing about Siakam is, I swear to God, under 5 minutes, he has less of a bag than Scotty. which is crazy.
Oh yeah, but because he has less ability to create separation, and number two, I think mentally he speeds up too much, and I hope this is something he can overcome for his sake
Like
or the
all he
Raptors'
can
sake,
do is a
because
step back mid range. That's all he can do. That's all. Like that's his default fight or flight is step back mid range.
yo, it was crazy to hear like Jakob Poeltl, saying that Pascal Siakam just has like such a advanced bag now, and he has like so many more moves and counters that he can do in the mid range. And I was just like, is he being disingenuous or is he blind?
I
He
know.
doesn't. Like he has like 3 to 4 moves, and if you're a defender out there and you have the capability to stay with him east west, I guarantee you can crowd him. He does not make his moves fast enough, nor does he create enough separation. And to anyone out there who's still even remotely even
And he doesn't have a
thinking,
strong base. He doesn't have a
right,
strong base.
that too, and he gets bumped off his center.
Yes,
If
he
you are
does.
thinking about a max contract or a super max contract for this guy, I tell you, every ounce of struggle he's had this season, I guarantee you the only reason it's not worse is because he does have a speed advantage on most defenders on most nights. When teams close that speed advantage down and they put a similarly sized defender on him, I was asked on Instagram, do I think, if Scotty faced Pascal in a one-on-one, game, what would happen? And I said, I took the coy, sort of politically correct answer, which I said, the better player would win. Yeah, code speak. I think Scotty would win that matchup because it's just physically
Yes.
impossible for one player to stop the other, and the other one can actually guard the other person. I think
Yep.
Scotty's an ideal matchup for a Pascal Siakam. I don't think
Especially
Pascal
if it gets
Siakam.
heated. Especially if it gets heated.
Yeah. If
Then
he
when
if
it
he wants to, he could take
no.
him, and that's the kind of crazy thing. It's like I feel like the same way about OG. I think
I
I don't know.
saw. Have you ever,
OG versus Pascal.
yeah.
I
Have you ever
popcorn.
have you
I
ever
would watch
watched
that.
have you ever watched a video? Dwayne Wade was like 2 years ago or something, and he's physically deteriorated, and he's playing against his son, who's a lot quicker than he is, and he got upset, and he just used the size advantage, and it was a wrap. He's like, no more games, layup, 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 and it was a wrap. It's
Hmm.
like you're not getting the ball. Like people don't understand. Even like 2 inches, if you play basketball, 2 inches and like 10 pounds. If that dude is serious, it's over for you. And he knows what he's doing. There's nothing you can do.
Absolutely.
There's
I
nothing you can do.
completely agree with that. And like when I look at the physical, like when I look at Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo, to me these are very incomplete basketball players. Mentally,
Yes,
they have
yes.
so many gaps. Like they make stupid
You,
passes all the
you,
time.
you
They
saw the
miss
turnovers by
cutters.
Embiid. You saw the
Yeah, like
turnovers by
the
Embiid. Yeah.
turn and the craziest, part about that, like where Alvin Williams is like, he didn't get the memo. That's Fred VanVleet over there. Nothing gets past him. And I was just like, oh my God, this is a joke that just writes itself.
Em-
Everything gets past him. What the fuck are you
Embiid,
talking about? Are you
Embiid,
watching the season?
Embiid, 5 turnovers, 1 assist.
Yeah.
Plus
And
zero.
and
Plus zero.
but the gap here
It's the
is,
free throw line. It's the free throw line.
number one, it's the free throw line. Number two is when Joel Embiid takes a step, he's past you.
Yeah.
Those long strides, those big shoulders, the strength, it's just physics. People want to complicate basketball like it's some beautiful game, and it is, but it's just physics. This is just physics. If I throw a 20-pound weight at a shard of glass, it's gonna snap. That's just physics.
By the, you know what else is physics?
What's
Uh,
physics?
when Fred is guarding Maxi or Harden and they do a sidestep, it is a wide open practice jump shot.
Yeah, because they're
Physics.
too quick. That's also physics.
And Fred with his
Too quick,
hands up,
too fast. Yeah,
Fred's with his hands up is a chair.
because he's too small.
No, it's
Oh,
actually hilarious. It's actually hilarious.
by the way, Scotty Barnes, did you see that? The too small thing? Did you see
Yeah,
that? Did
yeah,
you
yeah,
catch
yeah.
it?
On the minivan. What's his name?
Was it what? Who did he score on?
It was the chubby
Yang?
guy. Yes, yes, yes. They
Too
call him
small?
the minivan. They call him the minivan. By the way, if you don't know,
Do they?
yeah, that's his nickname. That's what he's built
I
like.
could understand that.
A used Dodge Caravan.
Oh my God. Wow. I mean, look, like you need some offensive toughness. I think at times that offensive toughness has come from Fred VanVleet, right? I think sometimes that offensive toughness has come from OG. I think sometimes it's come from, Gary. I think
Yep.
at times it's come from Pascal, like on the road
Yo.
against the New York Knicks. Offensive toughness came from Siakam.
I'm gonna go on Twitter right now. Rob. We'd be better if you replaced Pascal Siakam with Dorian Finney-Smith. We'd be better.
I don't know if I don't agree with that. Okay.
Okay, all
I
right.
just want to be for the record. I don't think so.
You
But
don't have to, but I actually think if we had a 3-and-D guy. By the
we
way,
have a 3D guy, OG
who's that?
Anunoby.
Well, we can't. If you're playing Scotty, I think the three guys around him have to be able to shoot,
No,
and the defense
I get what you're
respects
saying.
them to shoot. Also, by the way, is Mikal Bridges better than Siakam?
I feel like we address this in almost every single show, and I'm saying it's close. It's really close.
Have you checked his
Maybe
numbers?
yes.
Have you checked the last like 2
Have you
months?
checked the Nets record? I'm
They're
not saying
winning.
it's on him.
They're winning. They're winning.
They've been on a free fall since the trade, man. They're like at the threat of missing the playoffs.
They won again today. 124 to 107 against the Hawks, and they blew the brakes off the Heat the other night with Jimmy. They're winning.
I think okay. If you're asking me like, would I trade Siakam for Mikal Bridges? You want that clip on Twitter so we can get
No.
another meme? Yeah, I would.
The Nets will never do that. We know that. By the way, the NBA time moves fast in the NBA. It's what have you done for me lately? And also with Fred, if he doesn't like his role right now,
Yeah.
he's gonna hate his role next year.
With
if he's
who?
on this team.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's just no advantage to this, okay? Like, he does not provide anything. Like, I'm just being straight. If Scotty's your primary initiator, what is he? He's a low efficiency 3-point shooter who takes a lot of questionable shots, who can't really finish at the rim. What the fuck is he? 30 million a year.
What's Pascal?
Pascal is at least a switchable secondary creator. Right? I mean, he is at least, a competent transition player. And, if he fills lanes, he's at least a competent finisher at the rim, at least a somewhat decent, guy to run a second unit in terms of, like offense. If you had one starter to play with your second unit tonight, as an example.
Can I ask you this question? If he heads over the reins to Scotty, does Pascal's fourth quarter hiccups, do they go away?
I would hope so, because the pressure's off then, right?
If
I mean,
he just
it's different.
If he admits, I'm not that guy, I'm not him, I'll never be him, I'll never be top 10, I'm not even top 15, this is Scotty's team. If he just does a press conference like that,
you want him to do a press conference?
No. In an
How about a
imaginary
public
world,
whipping? Like what are we?
No. I'm just saying, if he admits it mentally to himself, do the fourth quarter hiccups go away?
That's the thing. He just needs to do it for himself. There needs to be a private conversation where we could say, you don't have to say you're a scrub, because you're not. You're a great player. Pascal is a great player. Fred's a great player, a good player, whatever. But you don't have to be an isolation scorer in the clutch against double teams, because that's a rare skill set. There are very few players in NBA history who've had that type of advantage generation, who have the body to create the type of the distance that you need, the space that you need to get those shots off. I mean, Michael Jordan at age 39, 40, 41 was a way, oh my God. Like, I think Michael Jordan at 50 is probably a better isolation scorer than Pascal Siakam. Like, there's just
LeBron
gaps,
James
angles.
At 38 is better than LeBron James right now at 38 is better.
He's
than
way better.
Pascal.
And Fred, listening to Fred VanVleet say he's a top 5 player is so crazy right now, yo. Like, and then in the same breath, I had to listen to that again. I'm like, did he just say he's a top 5 player and that he's his biggest critic in the same fucking sentence? No, it was two sentences apart. But like, crazy, yo.
I don't know.
And I'm like, he must not have heard of us. Biggest critic.
Before I go, you touched on the NBA needs to step in on Joel Embiid potentially like ending someone's career. I think the NBA needs to stop calling the swoop, like when the players swoop. Like, you know how Embiid does that? Like it's not a basketball play. Like, no one actually shoots that way, where they swing the ball so low and then they shoot. And the Kevin Durant sweep through.
Yep.
I personally, this may be extreme. I think the NBA needs to stop calling all of that, because then the players will adjust and they will just play basketball. I think those leg kickouts from 3, those need to be flagrant ones. They'll stop. The players aren't dumb. They'll stop immediately and play basketball the way it was supposed to be played, because that elbow is foul baiting, and it's not Embiid's fault. It's the NBA that encourages this stuff and rewards this garbage.
Yeah,
It's
there's a
their
there's a
fault.
there's a fundament, like I try to not be too critical of the refs unless
Players
there's just
jumping
a
backwards,
flagrant
players jumping
example.
backwards into people. I remember Chris Paul used to just dribble up the court and then just stop so somebody can run into him because bigs can't stop their momentum. You
Yeah.
remember like those things have to be eliminated. Play basketball at its purest form. This whole foul baiting thing, and another thing, I'm going on a rant right now. Why do referees give the benefit of the doubt to players who continuously foul bait? Why do they get the benefit of the doubt on a 50-50? Like, you know that first foul in the first quarter against Embiid where he just missed the dunk?
Hmm.
Why did they blow the whistle? Like, you're just guessing. Like, how do you know he was fouled?
Yeah. No, I get you. I get you.
Like, what are they doing? Like, Embiid deserves the benefit of the doubt. Like, he needs
Hmm.
15 free throws.
Yeah. No, I mean I get it, but he gets
That's
fouled a
why
lot.
I know
Like
he does.
you got to be honest. Like Joel Embiid gets fouled on
He
almost
does.
every single
He
play,
does.
right?
And
So
those elbows are out every single play.
that's fair too. That's fair too.
That's
Yeah,
why I don't want Philly. I don't want Philly. I
bro,
don't want to
you could
see.
go down the list. I don't want Philly. I don't want Cleveland. I don't want Boston. I don't want Milwaukee. Problem is,
At the top three, who
you
would you
fuck up
want?
enough,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
gotta play one of those teams.
Out of the
So
top three, who would you rather play? Out of the top three,
what's the top three? Philly, Boston, Milwaukee.
yeah, who would you rather play if you had to choose? I don't want to touch Philly. I think Embiid is the worst matchup for us.
I feel like
I think Embiid is the worst matchup for us.
they're all a loss.
Yes, but I want
If
Scotty
I
healthy. I want Scotty healthy. So please remove Embiid.
just from the entertainment standpoint, I think a rematch against Philadelphia would be really interesting. Of
So
course, from a what are your realistic odds that you might be able to upset them? I look at a team like Milwaukee and I say, do they have three guys who can stop OG Siakam and Barnes with Middleton, looking like he might be a little bit compromised sometimes. Um,
you can run that team ragged. They have a lot of older guys in Matthews,
they
Brooke
do.
Lopez.
They
They have
do. Drew
Portis.
Holiday is probably one of my favorite players in the NBA, though. It scares the
Portis,
living crap out of
Por-
me. And
Portis can't get up and down. Middleton looks hobbled. I think you could run that team ragged. Their only true athletes are right now Middleton. Giannis
Drew,
and Drew. Those are your only like athletes.
yeah. I honestly, I don't.
We're not going to
It's
beat them. We're not going to
like
beat them.
like you're
But
not beating any of these teams. And honestly, Boston is probably the team that scares me the most.
did you see what
They
they did to
always have.
Milwaukee?
Yes, I know. I think
Jesus.
they whooped them by 50, right? Something like
Yes.
that. Yeah. Like Boston is a really good team. I have been on this, I'm gonna call it Boston bandwagon pretty much the entire year. Get accused for it all the time. People are like, oh, look at Brown's numbers, look at Tatum's numbers. And it's like, bro, shut up. Like just shut up. This is a really freaking good team. I
Guys,
realize they're gonna go through ups and downs or whatever, but there are levels to this. I really genuinely believe if Tatum does not hurt his shoulder last year, they're the Larry O'Brien
I
trophy
agree.
winners.
I agree.
He was playing on a completely different level, and then that
I
shoulder
agree.
thing, and it's just like to people who never play basketball, like a shoulder injury for a basketball player on his shooting shoulder, like you got to be kidding me,
But
you
Rob,
know?
he's more guardable than Embiid. He's more guardable than Embiid. Embiid, there's nothing.
Tatum,
Yeah,
he's a
Embiid
better
is a.
he's a better playmaker than Tatum. He's a way better shooter than sorry, he's a better shooter than Embiid. And honestly, I think does like Embiid is like a lower basketball IQ guy, to
Who's
be
a better
honest.
player? Who's
So
a better player? Who's a better player?
I know that Embiid's a better player,
Thank you.
but I think you have a better shot of stopping him partially because he struggles with double teams. Like
Yes.
you can scheme. I just don't think it's possible to scheme against a guy like Tatum. Like it's not easy. Like
Who
he
do we have?
moves off the ball quickly
Who
enough.
do we have a
He
better chance of defending with our current roster? Tatum
honestly
or Embiid?
pick your poison. They're both really hard matchups. I think I'll give it to you. Probably have a better chance matching up against Embiid.
Really? How do you think Yak did against Embiid today?
Not well.
Exactly, and that was our best shot.
No, I don't think that's your best shot.
Who is it? OG? OG?
I've never felt that look, when people said, "Oh, now you finally have someone to stop Joel Embiid at the trade deadline," I was like, "You're insane. You need to check the numbers on Jakob Poeltl versus Joel Embiid. It's not been great for him." I think part of it is just, quite frankly, like, yes, I think
Girth.
it's no, it's everything. It's talent, it's skill, it's a particular matchup, it's girth, it's everything. I think, yeah, OG, like what the Raptors did last year, I think it can disrupt him, and I think Jakob just shores up the back line of that. But I think, yeah. Anyways,
Rob,
yeah,
it's crazy. We could have won this game
you really
today.
think we could have won this game?
I think being a competitive first round matchup all comes down to Fred. If Fred just says Scotty's him and we're gonna play through him and I'm just gonna take good
No,
shots.
Scotty's got work to do too. Like I know
I get it.
we're all like very high on Scotty
No, I
Barnes,
get it. I
playing
get it.
well, really well the last two games. But like, let's be real, he has some work to do. There are a couple of
I
times
get it.
tonight where he wanted to do something and he couldn't finish at the rim. It's not like he played a perfect game. However, yes, there are levels to this. As I say 100 times every single chat, there are levels to this. There are levels to this. We just renamed the show. There are levels to this. Toronto Raptors edition. But basically, yes, like I think Scotty's the guy with the future and the potential to do this, but he has ways to go right now too. And he is him. Yes, it's a trending meme, and people are talking about it and whatever. He still has work to do. That's all I'm going to say. He has work to do. He has work to do before he can think. There's a part of me that just it's a superhero culture or whatever. We just want to believe that Scotty Barnes can just turn it around in the fourth quarter and average 30 points per game. And there's a part of me that would love to see that. And maybe there's a part of me that deep down believes he could do that, like because he's just so physically gifted and so mentally gifted and so advanced for his age that he could genuinely impose his will on a game where he decided to take over. But he still has to pass the guys who have to make shots, and these guys
Yes.
aren't making shots. And he has to pass, to cutters who have to finish layups, and they're not finishing layups. So, is the team just that bad that no matter who runs the ship, it's running right into an iceberg?
Yeah,
Probably,
yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
I just think Fred needs to stop looking over Scotty when he has Milton or Maxi on him to dribble 10 times
yeah,
more.
yeah,
That
yeah,
has to
yeah.
stop. Like that has to
Because
stop
Scotty goes
altogether.
down court so early. He seals early. He seals Maxi in the
Yeah.
post. Seals Shake Milton.
And then
Whoever he
And then
has, he has a
Fred
5-6 inch
and then
advantage
Fred calls
and
Yak.
just looks him off.
And then
It's
Fred
just
says,
it's
Yak, my
insane.
turn.
Yeah,
Can I get an assist? Can I get an assist? That has to stop.
I agree.
But
Yeah,
then that has to stop. Like that has
yeah.
to stop.
Anyway, we're thank you so much, Coach Mo. We're gonna go to there's one more caller, Tank Commander, and I have to go to the washroom. So we're gonna go quickly to some pregame stuff. Sorry, not pregame, postgame interviews. 5 minutes of that, and then we're gonna come back. Then we're gonna talk to Tank Commander. Then we're gonna do the rest of the postgame,
Philly won't
and
make it
then
past the second round. Philly won't make it past the second round. That's another Raptor. All Raptors unite. You know what I'm saying? Philly won't make it past the second round.
I think they have a chance. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope
Anyway,
they don't though, so I can enjoy it. Their tears.
I want to see him. I want to see Joel Embiid cry again, man. So bad. Yeah.
Me too.
All right. Peace, man. Have a good one.
See ya.
And then to close out the chat at the very end, we're going to talk about Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell and why I think that we so consistently misread people and why it's so difficult to detect when we're being bullshitted. So first, let's go to Jakob Pertl, or as Herbie Kuhn calls him, Jakob Pertl. I don't know how he says it, but it's goofy and probably wrong. Here we go. And we'll be back in 5 minutes.
You see out there because obviously the start wasn't ideal, but you guys finished it out like relatively strong. If there's almost more minutes in the game, it might be a different result. But what did you see?
I mean, I think especially in the second quarter, we were really lacking. Our defense wasn't there at all. I think they scored almost every possession in that quarter, and yeah, they're too good of a team to give them that kind of lead. And we played well in the second half, but yeah, like I said, just can't allow a team like that to get ahead like that and then fight an uphill battle all game long.
What did you see from Scotty today that kind of impressed you? Maybe in the first quarter he had 6 assists, and then in the second half he really came in with a lot of energy.
Yeah, I thought he was really aggressive. Definitely helped us. I don't think our first quarter was too bad. Like we played him pretty well. Yeah, he was a big part of that. And then down the stretch, he's been aggressive, and it really helped us. But yeah, I mean, it's not going to help us much if we're not going to win the game.
Taking the positives out of this game, what needs to translate to Charlotte in the next 2 games? Because they're playing some really good basketball right now.
I mean, we just gotta play for 48 minutes is what it comes down to. I think that was the type of game where we played for 3 quarters. That second quarter was our downfall for tonight, and we can't let that happen against Charlotte tomorrow. Well, 2 days from now.
Chris, when you see games like this where, you guys had a solid start, but then were down by the half, by 20, and then managed to kind of close the gap, like, what's the feeling that you guys have, or it's like, what do you see out there?
I mean, obviously we should start the game like we played the third and the fourth. I feel like I've been here a bunch of times saying that we got to start the game with a lot of energy and stop doing the comebacks, the fake comebacks, because then we never win those. So I think that's something that we need to focus on, obviously. Those are costing us a lot of games, a lot of important games that we need to win.
Well, what about those comebacks that need to translate to closing it out?
So what?
How do you translate those comebacks into closing out the game?
I mean, obviously, it's like I said, we always do fake comebacks and we don't win. A lot of those games, imagine we would have won like 4 or 5 games, we would have played with that same energy. I think we would have been in a better position. So clearly, it's starting to cost a lot of game, and I think we're tired of seeing the same result every time. Obviously, it's the goals, the L's, and can't get no more L's anymore.
What are you seeing from Christian that may not always end up on the box score, but impacts the game?
He's a presence, takes a lot of space, wants to do the right thing. I think he comes with the same energy, and he listens. Like he wants to get better, and I think that's something that will always help you in the league, especially when you're young.
And then what's going to be key to bringing to Charlotte in terms of just energy or physicality and setting the tone early with defense?
Play like the second half. I think that this will help. If we could put 2 halves like this, we should beat anybody. But if we play like we played in the second quarter and lose by 20, we'll lose to anybody.
Obviously, not ideal.
I love that.
You guys closed the
Kept
gap
it real.
after having a 20-point deficit at the half. What did you see out there?
Well, we just obviously didn't quite get our defensive feet under us until the second half, and then we were really tough. I mean, we really played great defense second half, but on the heels of it had to be our worst defensive quarter of the season in the second. Little bit of an up and down game at that end. I thought offensively we were doing pretty well. If we just got into a few of our actions, we were finding a lot of good stuff all over the place. It feels like we had 26 assists. And the only other thing offensively is we had 3 turnovers at the half, right, and end up with 13, which means we had 10 in the second, right? So a couple of those were really critical, I thought. I think we had a 4-point game. We really had a good play designed, and probably should have taken the shot, and we tried to make one little extra lob pass at the rim, and it ended up being a turnover, and the shot was a pretty open 4, 5, 6 footer that probably is what we're looking for. But again, just kind of tale of 2 halves. Really happy with the way we competed in the second. Not so, and the first quarter. Just the second quarter is really the difference in the game there. Just tons of momentum for them, and not very many stops for us at all.
Is there any concern over the distance shooting for the Raptors?
I mean, listen, I thought we had our chances to make a few more tonight, right? We've had a couple games in a row where we've really gotten off to a slow start. I think the other night we started 1 for 18.
We are going to get back to Nick Nurse. Sorry to disrupt this, but I realize it's a little bit late, and I want to make sure that Yorgo and Tank Commander have a chance to come on. So we will conclude Nick Nurse part 2. He does tend to go a little bit long. Ha ha ha, coming from me, a guy who goes on my 30-minute rants to start the videos. But let's go to Tank Commander for a quick sec, and then we'll get to Yorgo. What's up, Tank Commander, man? What's up?
Hey, man. How's it going?
It's good. How are you
Man,
doing?
bro, I'm good. A little sad, I'm gonna say. But I didn't catch the first half of the game. I was kind of got busy.
Mhm.
And I saw We were already down by 20, and just the flow of the game. But just watching this Nick Nurse interview you had right now, he looks defeated, man. He looks absolutely defeated. And seeing that quote come out from him today about the whole Nick Nurse news, at first, I didn't take it seriously until I actually read the quote. As a coach, why would he, like, there must be more to this. Why would you have your players go into a game, a crucial game to make you go higher in the standings to get out of the play-in and say something like this? Like, it's actually defeating.
I didn't think about it that way.
Shocked.
That's a really good point. I didn't
Like,
think about it that
your
way. I didn't think
players
about like
think their coach checked out mentally. Why are they going to perform on the road, especially, right? For a serious game that has implications to your season. To come out, first I thought it was like a reporter said something like this. I'm like, oh, this could be fake news, not fake news, but it could be, through the grapevines. But to actually hear and see those quotes, man, I'm like, this organization, 10 years of professional organization down the tubes, man, in one season. This has been an utter disaster. My name is Tank Commander for a reason.
mm-hmm.
Man, it would have been so different if we had just went the other direction instead of this direction. We're going to be in purgatory. I could see it coming. My question to you, what's the vision for the next 3 years? What do you think, if you could look into Masai's brain, for the next 3 seasons, what is the vision for the Toronto Raptors?
Okay, so
Sorry, that's
unlike
a lot.
no, I mean that's fair. Look, I think when I look around the league and I say, consider like every team is like a stock, right? What stock would you want to hold for the next 3 years, right? Which stock's going up, which stock's going down? Obviously, when we think about stocks going up, we're thinking easily OKC. Like, wow. Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren coming back, another draft pick or two this year. That's great. New York, Emmanuel Quickly, Quentin Grimes, Jalen Brunson, he's 25, 26 years old. He's doing great, right?
Utah.
Even Utah with all their
Larry
picks.
Marketing, all their picks.
Totally. I mean,
Kessler,
you even
Walker
look at a
Kessler.
team like Minnesota, right? Like, I mean, they gambled their entire future away, right? So you're like, man, even all this upside of Anthony Edwards taking a step, finally playing defense. He's a young superstar in the making. But man, they've got this albatross contract on their hands. The Raptors do not have any albatross contracts yet.
I agree.
They could change that very quickly, though, right?
This offseason might change that with who. He who shall not be named. He who shall not be named.
Look, I look at this season as a turning point that could shape the next 8 to 9 years of Raptors basketball. Why do I say this? And look, this is all part of forward vision, future thinking. People are not good at this. I think this is a rare skill set. Being able to project in the future. I mean, if people were good at projecting in the future, I mean, everyone would be rich. Mm-hmm. Everyone would be rich because people would be able to time stock market crashes, real estate crashes, real estate booms. But people are terrible at this. People are terrible at spotting liars, and people are terrible at predicting the future. It's just how it goes. And so when I try to map out the next 4 or 5 years. There's so many variables that could change, right? I mean, let's say everything we're talking about right now. What if 15th pick, 14th pick, 13th pick in the draft turns into another Shea Gilgeous-Alexander type guy, right? Well, now the future is totally different. That guy comes out, averages 18 points per game next year, like a Ben Mathurin, type of talent with a lot more defensive upside. Your future looks completely different with one draft pick. One thing changed everything, right? You fuck up that pick, now you don't have a 2024 pick. Now the thing looks really depressing. So much is going to be based on that. What about trading? You get a sign and trade, going for Fred VanVleet versus losing him for nothing. Pascal Siakam, sign him to a supermax, sign him to a max, or trade him. Completely different timelines. Scottie Barnes, does he turn into a Kawhi Leonard type? I don't know. So every one of these variables can change it. But in terms of my optimistic vision, I see a team built around Scotty and OG with potentially Siakam and Jakob there. But if they're not, fine. Gary, I think he should be a part of the cards. I think some young talent developing. Precious Achiuwa, I'd like to consider this season a wrap or a scrap for him. But I think he's still...
man. Precious got one more season to turn it around. I'm going to just say that. He's still young. I get it.
I genuinely believe he's capable of more. Same thing with Christian Koloko. I see a lot of players on this team that are just capable of so much more, and I would just like to see what this team looks like with no chemistry issues under a new coach. A lot of shit can change, man. A lot of shit can change under a new coach, new
Nurse is
system,
finished.
new
Nurse
season.
is gone. Nick Nurse is done. Like that making that quote at this time in the season, at this exact moment, the
Look,
writing's on the wall. He's done.
I have seen Kevin O'Neill get fired. I have seen, Jay Triano get fired. I have seen their body language in the weeks leading up to the end of the season, and trust me, it's the same. Lame duck coaches, guys, it's not necessarily a lame duck coach, but a coach who
He's a lame
knows
duck
like
coach.
that.
He is, because he's got 1 year on his contract. It's kind of like after this season, he's a kind of a lame duck coach.
Yeah, but I mean, also you got to look at this from a perspective of negotiating power, right? I mean, that's sort of the underrated stuff we've never talked about on this channel yet. Is hey, this guy is up for a contract too, and he's making big money.
Yeah,
Relative to NBA coaches, he's making big money.
That's
After
true.
the championship season, he renegotiated his contract.
Yeah,
Something that I think not enough people talk about. And, the Raptors agreed to renegotiate his contract, and they gave him a lot of money. I believe he's being paid $8 million a year, and he's a clutch client. And, leverage is leverage. If you're a coach, right? Like, development is such a funny thing, right? Coaches rarely ever get credit for development. Players typically get credit for development. It isn't until there's so much that goes into development. We tend to give players credit for development. We tend to give coaches credit for wins. I think this is somewhat of a backwards way and a bit of a gap in terms of how we pick coach of the year almost every single year as well, which is specifically that we don't give enough credit to the coach who allows a young team to grow properly, right? And until it materially shifts and changes into actual wins for the team. So yeah, not to dodge the question any further, I think the Raptors will be fine. I really do. If they go into this offseason with a real perspective on who Pascal Siakam is and is not, a real perspective on who Fred VanVleet is and is not, a real perspective on what Scotty Barnes can be and may not become if you don't allow the correct pathway for him to, and clear perspective on the fact that this is a very do or die offseason, and it's like, again, you go the wrong way this offseason, you make three bad moves would be re-sign Fred, re-sign Pascal to a big max contract when he is clearly, in my opinion, on the verge of a massive decline. Like, I'm telling you,
Siakam's on a decline.
I think he's going to be on a decline very soon. If not next year, then the year after, you will see. Because look, I've mentioned it many times. Basketball is always going to be about physics. Like, we look at players when they lose a step, and somehow they have to adjust. They have to become better outside shooters. They have to become stronger. There's always going to be an adjustment period. Look at Steph Curry. Steph Curry is a great example of a player who is aging like fine wine. Because and look at his body relative to what his body looked like 5 years ago. He is deezed. He's
put in the work.
huge.
He put in the work.
Right? He put in the work. Why? Because he is a very realistic human being who is very remarkably self-aware, and he knows that in order to age gracefully, people talk about LeBron James great. That's a 1 in a million type of situation. No one's gonna age like LeBron James. This is freaking genetic freak, total $1 million a year. You're seeing all of that investment pay off now in year
20.
he's in year 20 almost. So, but I see a guy like a Fred VanVleet and a Pascal Siakam really they are grasping to straws here. This season could not have worked out worse for these guys.
It's been a horrible season.
Because not only did they not win, not only are they correctly being held accountable for the lack of winning. So the whole spiel about, we don't have a bench, we don't have a center, this whole thing didn't work out, right? Because that was the narrative going throughout most of the season. Oh, we're great, but our teammates suck. Well, now hopefully the fan base and the media and NBA analysts and everyone is waking up to the idea that you guys are just not that good. You're not as good as you think you are. And
I think they came to realize that after this Nick Nurse thing going on.
Yeah.
I think today's the day where they're like, this team, we're not there.
Exactly. And so look, losing to Philadelphia should be expected. This is an expected outcome. And if you face this team in the playoffs, winning in Philadelphia was always going to be a pipe dream. You need, if we go on a 7-game series against Philadelphia, you got to win every game in Toronto, and you got to pray for one in Philly. It's gonna be a
Yeah.
7-game series. If
No matter what.
in the absolute best case scenario, it'd be a 7-game series. In the worst case scenario, it's a 4-game sweep. That's just how it goes. When
You think without,
when you're that
I
much
guess they have
worse,
to elbow Embiid, get him out of the game, and it'll still go to 7 maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, honestly, like at this point, like I don't know if the Raptors would have a chance if Joel Embiid sat the series.
Yeah. 100%.
James Harden's really good. Like people don't realize that. He's like, again, he's playing all NBA. He's playing at an all NBA level. And even last year when he wasn't quote unquote very good, when Leo and I went down and broke the film, it was, even in Maxi's 44-point game or whatever, it was Harden who was consistently tearing the defense apart, picking it apart. And one of the things I noticed tonight, like I know you didn't watch the first half, but like, man, the ball hums for Philadelphia. Like you would think with two superstar type talents that the ball would stick and, those guys would just pound it and look for their own. But man, like, Harden is just such a boom, boom, boom facilitator. The ball's going side to side. The Raptors don't know what boom.
That's elite guard play. That's basically elite guard play. If you think of the Raptors, our backcourt and our guard play, where do you think would rank in the East? Just on guard play alone.
On guard play?
Yeah.
So who are we talking? Fred, Gary, Jeff Doughton?
Yeah, pretty
Scotty?
much.
Is Scotty a guard? Because he's playing guard right now.
That's where it gets tricky. That's where it gets kind of tricky. Scotty is like, on the fence of being a guard, being a forward. But if you just take out Scotty, where do you think we would rank? And like, I'm not even talking about only
if
the
you
playoff
take
game.
out Scotty?
Yeah, just take out,
Bottom 10. Easy bottom 10. Bottom 10 easy.
100%.
Thinking Basketball did top 10 backcourts in the NBA. I don't know if you listened to that episode, but definitely go watch it. You know how many times the Raptors were mentioned? 0. Not one mention, not honorable mention, not even a what do you think about these guys? Not even on their fucking radar. So that's where, a backcourt of even Fred VanVleet, Scottie Barnes, and Gary Trent Jr. is in the league. Because, look, other teams are not, like, the other teams are great. Kyrie Irving
have at least one guard that's above average or like close to elite. We don't have that.
Boston was at the end of their top 10. That's how bad it is because they consider Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum front court players. So their rotation. So this is what Thinking Basketball, again, one of the best in terms of just analytical minds and thinking the game and understanding the numbers and allowing the numbers for the most part to dictate their takes as opposed to re-engineering their takes to fit numbers that they just carefully are glossing over. They had the Boston backcourt of Marcus Smart, Derek White, and Malcolm Brogdon as like the 9th or 10th best backcourt in the NBA. But when you look across the league, that's not even unfair. I mean, Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell is a backcourt. DeJounte Murray and Trae Young is a backcourt. Kyrie and Luka is a backcourt. There are a lot of really great backcourts in the NBA. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and
Harden,
Josh Giddey, Harden, Maxey, and DeAnthony Melton is a backcourt. Ja Morant. Oh my God.
Yeah,
there's so many talented backcourts in the NBA. The Raptors don't have one. Okay. And backcourt play is typically what's going to get you through the regular season.
100%. 100%.
But I think defensive versatility, matchups, these things, and this is the only thing at this point that I'm holding on to as hope for the Raptors in the playoffs is they, in a vacuum, have, in my opinion, the best defensive toolkit in the league. Toolkit, not defense, toolkit. In terms of if I could I'm playing 2K or I'm playing a one-off game or whatever, give me an OG Anunoby, a Scottie Barnes, a Pascal Siakam, a Fred VanVleet, a Jakob Poeltl, a Precious Achiuwa. Give me these defenders and let me construct a game plan to stop a Jason Tatum or a Joel Embiid or a
100%.
Tyrese Maxey, whatever.
But then on the other side, on the offensive side, you're kind of screwed.
Well, defense and offense is very related. You allow a team to shoot 56% from you. How many transition opportunities are you actually going to have? Now, it doesn't help that the Raptors botch fast breaks every single game.
All the time.
That 4-on-3, 5-on-4, 5-on-3 somehow gets fucked up because the other two defenders don't come back and somehow you throw the ball away.
I feel like last year that's what we were good in. That's where we got most of our points on the transition.
Transition
getting
was
off a
better
steal.
last year. Yeah, like I
Yeah.
remember a lot of
And this
Scotty
year,
and
like,
Pascal transition. It was good.
when we have those moments and it gets in like Van Vliet's hands, it just, I don't know. It's like the offense just like not collapses, but it just freezes for a split second, and then you're basically, your play is over. You're set. Your chance is done. And I just find it like mind-boggling. But yeah,
Yeah, I
Tank
agree.
Commander. Let's see what happens, man. One more
Well,
quick question. Do you watch, before I go, do you watch Ted Lasso?
no.
Oh, you should check it out, man. It's a really good show.
Is it? I've
Yeah,
heard
yeah, yeah.
about
I
it.
think you said you're a film writer, a filmmaker before. I really think you'll enjoy Ted Lasso. It's about it's Jason Sudeikis. He basically is a
My
football
friend
coach.
my friend oh, okay, I remember this. Yeah, my friend directed Jason Sudeikis in a feature called Kodachrome.
Really, wow. As
Yeah.
a sports fan, I think you'd really enjoy Ted Lasso, man. It shows you like different aspects of sports with the, obviously, of course, the comedic side. But I think you might like it. Check it out, man.
I'll
Yeah.
definitely check it out. Yeah.
All
All
right,
right,
man.
Thanks a
Appreciate
lot,
it.
Tank Commander.
All right.
Cheers. All right. And your goat. What's up? What's up, Detroit? What's going on? Hello? Your goat? What up, man?
Yo, sorry, I had to get some water. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Sort of stressed right now, but yeah,
Why are you stressed?
because they canceled our flight to Turkey for our game. Like we're gonna participate in a tournament, so
Oh, okay.
and we were gonna reschedule it, but it's very stressful right now. But
Okay.
yeah, so much of this game has already been talked about. The Raptors fought back, but when you put yourself in, like when you let 77 points and a 77% field goal in the first half, it's going to be very difficult for you to come back, right? I feel like this was a
Defense
moral
showed up in the second half, but
yeah.
yeah, it was just too late, and the
It was
offense sort of crumbled.
you could say it was a moral victory, like coming back to fight against the 76ers, but moral victories don't really matter in these type of games. You have to get a victory, in my opinion. So those are really my thoughts on the game. But
Yeah, I mean, like, look at the
I-
largest lead. The Raptors' largest lead tonight was 1. The Philadelphia Sixers led by 24 at one point.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean,
It-
points in the paint was relatively even, fouls
Yeah.
relatively even. I mean, what's the big gap here? Honestly, it's just the efficiency. They shoot 8% better from the three. They shoot 6% better from the field. And if you wanna talk about gaps, that's the gap between having superstars take your offense and
Yep.
your non-superstars taking your offense. And whatever you're gonna say about Scotty Barnes, his ascent towards that level of player, he's
Mhm.
not there yet. I mean, but he was good tonight. 13 for 19, really efficient. Not his fault for sure.
So some of the questions, one of the questions I have for you is OG and Scotty played well tonight. I really have liked them this season, how they play off each other. I really enjoy them. And when we look at the other duo on the Raptors with Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam, which have been disappointing in my opinion. Their expectations have been sort of high, and they haven't really met that this season. And maybe you could say playoffs in the bubble or last season. So my question is, was sort of a two-part question. Do you think OG and Scotty should literally just take over the Raptors squad right now? And if they do, how do you see them? How do you see OG and Scotty as a duo doing in the next few years?
I mean, obviously, when you look at top duos in the league, right, they would be in the bottom half
Mhm.
of most effective, most talented top 2 duos in the league. They're definitely not it right now, right? They both got such a long way to go. OG I like that behind the back pass from OG tonight. It was like, what the hell? This is new. Like, this is new for him. Scotty with his handle, it's getting better. Everything's getting better. But yeah, like, I mean, the hypothetical version of these two is like a top 5, top 6 type of duo in the league, but that could be very far away. That could be years away. That could be maybe 3 years away. But yeah, I mean, I'll take my chances with 2 6'8" switchy, guys who can guard 1 through 5 and will never be defensive liabilities on one end selfless guys on offense, yeah, I'll take my chances with that. But right now, I mean, really, Scotty has to develop as a shooter for that to work, in my
Yep.
opinion. For him to become a primary or a secondary option on offense, he has to be able to space when he's the secondary. He has to be able to punish defenses when they sag, right? Like they go under the screen on him all the time, right? Because they don't have to go over. And then even if you can adjust in the regular season and the playoffs, you can really get like exposed. Every weakness in your game gets highlighted in the playoffs. That's why so few players do well in the playoffs. Typically you'll see scoring will be down, transition play will be down, because it just becomes harder to score when other people take away all the stuff that you want to be able to do. Right now, Scotty's beasting on the boards, and there's a lot of feeling of the stuff that Scotty and OG do because of their physical gifts and strength. There's not really a lot people can do about it, right? If OG wants to take you in the post or whatever, but his footwork down there is not great. His ball handling has sometimes been questionable. His isolation scoring is horrible. Scotty for the season, 3-point shooting, big issue. Mid-range shooting, big issue. But again, all the potential is there. No one on this channel should be arguing that it's there right now, they're there right now. But yeah, the problem is you try to reroute and try to build a team around these two, unless the other three guys are just the best assembly of role players, you're back in the lottery next year.
Yep.
And you don't have a pick, so that's the problem, and that's why this channel has been pretty committed to that. So if instead of treating this like it's got to be a 2-man thing, instead it can be like a 3 to 4-man thing, kind of like what the Atlanta Hawks did, where it's like very egalitarian. And by Atlanta Hawks, I mean Atlanta Hawks back when they had Korver and Horford, that team, or even the Detroit Pistons, where it could be anyone tonight.
Yep.
Until Scotty is ready to take that step, and he might take that step next year. He might take it the year after. He might take it in the playoffs. I have no idea when that step is coming, but until that step comes, this team has to operate as other teams in the past who have not had a go-to dominant superstar have to operate, which is, play for each other, and just wait for somebody to take that next step.
I agree, but I really do love the potential for Scotty Barnes and OG to an extent, although he can improve on a lot of things, OG, but like, for me, Scotty Barnes has the most potential. As you said, if he can really develop a shot, this duo could probably go to next level, you could say, because if Scotty, that would be dangerous. Like Scotty.
Yeah, I think in both, because both guys are selfless, like they would naturally help other players on their team also succeed. So I genuinely believe, like, if those two guys are paired with 3 great role players, with some alpha scoring skills as well, like some guys who maybe isolation score, one guy who just be like a dominant post scorer, great finisher in the paint, kind of like, Jakob Poeltl, Gary Trent Jr., and one other guy, maybe a Mikal Bridges type. Yeah, like I pretty much believe if you swap Siakam for Mikal Bridges right now, started Scotty, Mikal Bridges, OG, Gary, and Siakam. Wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Forget Gary. Bring Gary off the bench and Jakob Poeltl. I think you'd be a playoff team. I genuinely believe that. The change and shift is just mainly the gap between Siakam and Bridges defensively is not that big right now. Mikal Bridges is having a pretty bad year defensively by his standards, but offensively, where Mikal gets his touches from is totally different. So I think if I'm Nick Nurse, Masai Ujiri, revisiting the drawing board this offseason, I'll pat myself on the back for assembling a talented team. I'll definitely go to the drawing board and wonder, how can I swap out some of the pieces that don't work with what I have. I think the only thing that they need to establish is, what are your non-negotiables? Is Scotty your non-negotiable? Because he was in Kevin Durant trade talks.
Yeah.
Is Siakam part of your non-negotiables? Because if Scotty and Siakam are definitely in that starting lineup together, the 3 other guys have to be lights out shooters. And this Siakam thing cannot work, in my opinion. It's just always going to be an issue with how are you supposed to put up points. Like the Sacramento Kings right now have like an offensive rating, I believe, of like 120 or something.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Like, how are you supposed to even beat teams that are in the 117 to 120 range when you have 3 guys who don't consistently make threes? So this is just really difficult, unless every other player on your team is like Tyler
Kyle
Hero
Korver
or Kyle
type
Korver
of.
type,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to make it work. And I can totally see the wheels turning, for Masai and Bobby, where they're looking at this saying like, hey, if Otto Porter just played, like, like this changes. Fred VanVleet just is a 39% shooter this year and in a contract year, or if OG and Gary just, if Scotty takes the next step or whatever, like they probably are telling themselves, we're just at the door. Maybe that's a big reason why they signed Will Barton. Like a hope that maybe they catch Will Barton on a hot streak instead of the cold disaster that he's been on. It changes everything. It changes everything. You add two threes made as opposed to misses. That's not a huge shift. With how poorly the Raptors have shot all year, adding 2 threes, I mean, statistically speaking, it's a massive shift. But like in theory, on any given night, just saying if we made 2 more threes than we missed, like we're in these games or we're winning these games clear. The net differential will tell you that, the margin of wins, right? The offensive rating will tell you that this team is close. The problem is it seems like the structure that brings you to we're close has tapped out. Right? You can say like, okay, well, like, there are certain teams in the league where you're like, if we just swapped out this player, like Indiana is a great example of that, right? If you just swap out this one player that we're playing all these minutes for a better version, we're great because we have everything. It all works. We just have to swap one piece out. The Detroit Pistons, when they made that trade for, ironically talking to you about the Detroit Pistons, but when they made the trade for Rasheed Wallace, that was the missing piece.
Yep, because
right?
Darko Milicic was not performing, so we had to get a power forward who could really help us offensively, which was what
Darko really wasn't the problem there, to be honest.
No, I understand, but he wasn't really performing, so we needed Rasheed.
You're showing your age here.
No, bro. What I'm saying is Darko wasn't playing as well as we wanted him to in that system. So we needed a player.
Darko was a 17-year-old rookie when you made the trade for Rasheed Wallace. So you don't understand what you're talking about.
No, come on, bro. Come on.
No, you're wrong. Anyways, it doesn't matter. My point is that it was not because of Darko. Trust me. Like, as someone who followed that situation very, very carefully, Darko was not expected to do very much in his rookie year, and that's when he traded for Rasheed. The issue, however, was that you did need a guy who could close out a quarter for you or close out a possession for you. That's what Rasheed did. So you look at that system and you're like, okay, we have the defensive tools here. We have a Tayshaun Prince. We have the Rip Hamilton and Chauncey Billups. There's synergy in that backcourt. We have Ben Wallace in the center. What do we need to fill this? That's perfect. And if the Raptors were there, as they maybe falsely assumed they were there with Jakob Poeltl signing, they're like, oh, we have everything. That's the misreading. You aren't there. So adding Jakob Poeltl, even though he's a good fit and he's a good player, and in a vacuum, he's been very impactful at shoring up some of your weaknesses, even though like that works, the rest of it doesn't. So now you just have another guy who kind of fits into something that doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just kind of dancing around this, but like my thing would be they need to reevaluate how this all works. Who are the guys who synergistically work with each other? Who are the guys who are getting in each other's ways? What parts of the court do you need to shore up defensively and offensively? What are your glaring weaknesses? What has been, your biggest issue this year apart from chemistry? And why has your chemistry been so awful this year? Is it just coaching? Is it rotations? Is it the contract distractions? Or is there genuinely something about the way this team plays basketball that is, quite frankly, hard to play in, and that is disrupting the rhythm of guys like this? Like, I'm pretty sure we stage a pickup game right now and Precious Achiuwa wouldn't be like fucking having like air balls and shit from 3, but it just happens that way where certain systems consistently disrupt rhythm.
Yeah, so with that, I've kind of noticed this over the Raptors season, and especially the last call. There's a lot of uncertainty with what the Raptors are going to do with the future. Sort of, because I mean, there's a lot of possibilities between you guys re-signing for VanVleet or Pascal or doing these sort of trades. So that leads me to a question that involves my team. It might be a hard question, but who do you think will be better in the next 5 years, the Raptors or the Pistons?
Raptors.
Man, I got that. If we get rid of Killian Hayes, we'll be better. I'm telling you.
that may be the case, but you're still building around Cade Cunningham. And
Mhm.
and yeah, I understand why there's a reason for optimism because, Jalen Duren is good and Jaden Ivey is hella talented and all that stuff. But I genuinely believe that I do not trust the ownership of that group. I don't trust the management of that group.
Mhm.
And y'all are playing James fucking Wiseman over Jalen Duren. I do
I
not
know,
trust there's just two teams that are lost, but there are different levels of lost,
of course.
in my opinion.
It's
Anyway,
at the start of the season. I thought we had a lot of optimism, but judging off of us getting James Wiseman and starting him over Jalen Duren,
mhm.
and then having to see Killian Hayes still playing at the point guard. But I don't even want to talk about that dude.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
talk about
he's
you
really-
you might as well be Killian Hayes's agent because you talk about him more than any human
I know. I
being.
don't.
You
It's a.
talk about
I
Killian
know. I
Hayes
know.
more than
I
Killian
know.
Hayes' mother talks about Killian Hayes a year
No, but
ago.
it's like ranting because I see him every game. He's like 2 for 16 with 4 assists and 3 turnovers. I have to watch that every game, dude. If you were to watch Killian Hayes on the Raptors doing the same thing for 82 games every season, you would probably be talking about him more than me because he's horrible, dude. Like,
I think if I was a Pistons fan, I would have checked out by now. Anyway, all right, thanks a lot, Yorgo.
all right, thank you.
Cheers. Have a good one. I have a feeling we're about to get trolled because we got some. Okay, get ready for it. Get your popcorn out. We got next up. We got some names that I do not recognize. Um, One is you're a zoophile, and the other one is StreamYard CEO. Okay, let's see who these people are. StreamYard
Hello,
CEO.
I am StreamYard CEO,
Okay.
and are we talking about basketball players over here, or?
Yes.
Okay, my favorite basketball player is LeBron James. And I'm sorry if I laugh, it's just because it's my first time on here, you know why. I just love LeBron James, he's so cool. He's so bald that he can lick my ass.
That's terrible. That's terrible. I was with you up until LeBron James, but let me tell you something. This opens up a nice little segue into what I want to talk about to close this chat out. All right, now we got let me in. Please don't be a troll, chat.
Hello.
What's up?
I don't know.
Oh my god. How bored is your generation?
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. When trolling fails so hard that you don't even know where to go with it. All right. Amin saying it's the same callers. Yes, it was two people who clearly dialed in at the same time and decided to give this Twitter meme a piece of their mind. That's cool. Okay. I was listening to a Raptors podcast. I'm not going to talk about which Raptors podcast, but you probably guess probably from the tone. And I was trying to understand, what is it this whole thing about, like how do other people address a bad performance? What am I missing? Is there a nice way to say Pascal Siakam sucked tonight that I'm just not getting? Is there a way that I can adjust my tone 5%, not change what I'm saying, not adjust my thinking, but is there a way that I can address a bad Fred VanVleet game that doesn't make me come off like I hate the guy? Because I don't hate the guy, I just hate the way he plays basketball. And I'm listening to this pod and, like, what are we talking about here? I'm listening to them make fun of fucking Mason Plumlee's bald spot. Like little girls just giggling, he's so bald. And I was just like, yo, what are we talking about here? It's not basketball. This is making fun of Obi Toppin. Oh, Obi Toppin had 44 points. Oh, Obi Toppin. Yo, these guys are like that feels personal to me. And it's not even personal. It's like you're making fun of like people, like, yo, there has to be some level of respect paid. Yeah, Raptors Nation is right. Like, what the there has to be some level of respect here. These guys are professional athletes. They are among the 550 best players in the world at what they do. Every player in the NBA is great at basketball. And I think that it's one thing to say this team is not playing right. It's not playing to its strengths. The ball is sticking too much. This guy's playing for a contract. He's being selfish, whatever. But yo, like, it does veer into crazy territory for me when we start going into personal stuff, physical appearance stuff. If a guy's ugly, or you think he's ugly, or you think his StreamYard CEO, get out of here, man. Don't ever talk about LeBron. What the? Banned from studio. Y'all banned. Get out. Like, keep it to the X's and O's, and if it does have to go a little bit personal, yeah, because players are people, and sometimes they say stupid shit and do stupid shit, and sometimes it is selfish, and yeah, maybe you have to cross that line once in a while, or if you're me, maybe every single night. And it's not something that I want to do. I would love to enjoy great basketball. I'd love to, there's a chance you could play tonight. Great. I don't think the Sixers played great. And just be honest, I don't think they played great, and they still won. But there's a chance you could have played tonight, played really hard, guarded your butt off, moved the ball, taken the right shots, and still lost. There's a shooting variance thing to this. Sometimes the right shot by the right guy at the right time just doesn't go in. That happens. We're not getting mad at people for shooting 5 for 15. Get mad at people for not making the right pass. Get mad at people for sticking with the ball. Get upset at someone for not getting back in transition. Get mad at get upset with a coach for putting a lineup together that just wasn't jiving and waiting too long to call a timeout. Things like this. It's still basketball. Making fun of Mason Plumlee's bald spot, LeBron's bald spot, Kevin Durant's bald, this stuff is just is so crass. It's so below the belt. It's so childish. So, like, and this particular podcaster that I'm addressing this, they've previously gotten in trouble for this stuff with Chris Boucher. Again, if it's still basketball, you're talking about Chris Boucher's basketball IQ. Sometimes it's like. But you talk about Chris Boucher like he isn't somebody who's done a million times more with his life than you ever will. Like, then you suddenly start to lose sight, of reality. Fred VanVleet is 1,000 times better at basketball than I am at podcasting, and he's a million times more successful at it. It doesn't take anything off for me to sit here and like criticize the way he looks or whatever. It's just, okay, this trolling is getting to the next level. Grooming minors. I mean, Jesus. Kick, ban. So anyway, I guess I just wanted to say that. Now, to close out very quickly, I just want to give a shout out to this book, Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. To anyone who hasn't read it, honestly, Google it. There's an audiobook on YouTube. You can definitely check it out. It's worth 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever it would listen to get through that audiobook. And there's also summaries, to those of you who have the attention span of goldfish and want everything, given to you very quickly. No offense, but, to that generation, and there is, a segment of population out there that's like that. First, by all means, go listen to the summary. You'll get something from it. Malcolm Gladwell in his, so typically, we tend to be very bad at spotting bullshit. I think if I could gift you with one skill in the whole world, it would be to be able to know when someone is lying to you, right? I mean, the car is great. It's good. I'm going to be there for you. How many of us have been like sort of betrayed by somebody, and it's always when we're lied to, when we're manipulated, when we're gaslit, when we're conned, by an online scam or a phishing scam or whatever, we almost always go to the same thing. We're so stupid. How could we have not known that this girl was doing this, or this guy was doing that, or that this thing was too good to be true, or this vacation that I won was a complete scam? I think most of us have been scammed at least once or twice in our lives. Some of us more than once or twice, right? Um, yeah, I agree with this. Sentential logic is. No, I don't necessarily think so, but sure, that would be a great skill too. So in the book, basically, Malcolm Gladwell goes through countless examples and, points to why we are so bad at spotting liars. And most of it has to come down to the fact that, I mean, he compares computers. He says computers are better at, telling whether or not the person who is speaking to us is lying. And typically this has to do with the fact that we assign a great deal of our investment into believing naturally that people are telling us the truth. We have a natural bias towards the truth. We have a natural bias that when Fred VanVleet or Pascal Siakam say that they're playing for the team, that they're telling us the truth. Why would they be lying? We have a natural balance to, we have a natural bias towards when Nick Nurse tells us that he believes that his team has a shot in a 7-game series to believe that he's telling us the truth. And we have a natural bias towards the truth. Most of us do. Some of us do not. Some of us have a natural bias towards being skeptical. I am definitely more on the skeptical side. I tend to meet people at 50. I don't meet people at 100. I meet you at 50. Every single person I meet them at 50. And you either go up or down from there based on your actions. And this natural skepticism can also backfire sometimes. Sometimes you misread somebody. But I think the most important thing to take away from that book is that we are all, at least at times, terrible at spotting someone who is misleading us or lying to us. So, and most of us think that we could tell. Most of us think that, we're really good at spotting a liar because we go towards the example that we definitely caught. But most people, when polled, are barely better than a coin flip at spotting a liar. It's 50-50, right? So Koopa Troopa saying, so how do we spot liars? Well, the first thing is that most of us are misled by liars or people who are misleading us in general because we assign way too much to reputation. Reputation is number one. So someone's reputation, when you think about examples, especially those used in the books, examples like Larry Nassar, right? Someone who is an Olympic doctor, right? Consider the flow of information here. He is an Olympic gymnast doctor. That's part one. That's the resume. Okay? He is vouched for by the University of Michigan or Michigan State University. He's, got this incredible number of years of experience. That's information strand number 2. Number 3, kind of looks like this nerdy, somewhat reserved, somewhat timid. That's information number 3. Now, he's one of the biggest serial rapists in American history and a pedophile. How do you reconcile those two? Well, most of us naturally jump to the assumption that, well, all of these really, really smart people put this guy in a position of power because they vetted him, right? If you're a guy out there and, you're, I don't know, it's, if you're a guy out there and you want to be successful with women, I think one of the earliest lessons that I learned is be around attractive women. Attractive women will look at guys who are around attractive women and will naturally be drawn to them, assuming that the other attractive women that they deem to be attractive, women are checking out women as much as guys are, and they're looking at these women, these super attractive women around you, and assuming that if you are around these really attractive women, you must have something going on. You must be wealthy, successful, charming, funny. You've got to have something going on. Sitting alone, yeah, maybe there's something wrong with you, right? We constantly look for a synthesized version of reality in which we piece together the gaps in our information, and we assume that they are fact. We assume that the university that hired the guy and the number of employers that he's had and all the parents who trusted him who were in the room, we all have the exact same assumption that they all did their due diligence. A natural skeptic mindset would say they didn't. So how do we tie this back to the Raptors? Well, We have an assumption that someone who has been executive of the year always is going to know what he's doing better than someone who didn't win that award. We have an assumption to that. We have an assumption that someone who's won coach of the year is good at coaching. Sam Mitchell won coach of the year, probably one of the worst coaches in the NBA that year, in my opinion. In my opinion, not a great coach at all. But there's an assumption. We have an assumption that big numbers equal big impact. This is an assumption. This channel has devoted countless hours through lives and videos and video breakdowns to make you more skeptical. Not make you more toxic, not make you more critical, make you more skeptical. That when somebody, like, here's my dream. Here's my dream. My dream is that you miss a game, you miss a Raptor game, you turn on the news, you see Pascal Siakam or Scottie Barnes sitting there, and you see 30 points, and that you don't automatically assume that that was a great game. That is what I'm hoping for, because 30 points does not equal a great game. It just so happens that a lot of great games look like that. It works backwards. When Fred VanVleet tells you that he's a leader, there's a natural assumption to believe that look at all the people who know what they're doing, who have put him into that position. Masai Ujiri certainly knows what he's doing, right? He's a former executive of the year, regarded as one of the best ever. Well, I'll say ever, but definitely when you talk about top executives in the league, top general managers, top presidents, Masai Ujiri is firmly in that conversation, and rightfully so. When we talk about best coaches in the NBA, up until this year, Nick Nurse was firmly in that discussion. Top 10, top 5. This guy can do anything with anyone. NBA champion. That's a part of Fred VanVleet's resume, right? Analytics back him up. He's one of your better players. And then there's him. He's so charming. He's so, he gives you the quote. He gives you the, I gotta tell you, Doug. It's, it's no babies allowed. We gotta pick it up. If you don't pay attention, really close attention, start dissecting his words, you fall right for it. But you are seeing evidence point to the counter. But most of us are so gung-ho that all these people who put him in power, they didn't make a mistake. And he won a championship, so he's not a loser. It has to be somebody else's fault. Well, Scotty didn't win a championship. Maybe it's Scotty's fault. Bench didn't win a championship. Maybe it's the bench's fault. I'm trying to understand where the people who are still beating their Siakam's a superstar, Fred VanVleet's not the problem drum are coming from. And I'm starting to understand that Malcolm Gladwell has your answer. Talking to strangers is the answer. Now, most of us assume that being duped and admitting that we were duped and admitting that we were wrong means that we are idiots. Well, that's not true. Back in the Cold War, the CIA had the mountain climber. He was their by far top agent. He was a legend, considered a wide legend. And he went to Cuba and he set up a series of informants. I believe there were 48 informants, and it was a network of informants. The CIA was very, very happy about this network of informants that this mountain climber has put together. And then some years later, the mountain climber was asked to meet with this Cuban version of the mountain climber, right? And he met with him, and he gave him some devastating news. He's like, you remember that guy Juan, who was like a agent for you, who was an informant? He would send you all of Castro's documents. Yeah, that guy, he was a spy. He was working for us. Mountain climber is devastated. It's like, oh my God, really? That guy? Wow, he was like my top guy. He's like, yeah, I got bad news for you. You remember that guy Antonio? Yeah, he was also a double agent. Turns out his entire network was double agents working for the Cuban government. You might think that your uncle who got screwed over for that one, Ponzi scheme once in a while, like whatever, is the idiot. And we all have a natural assumption that when someone falls for one of those Nigerian phone scams, that they must be idiots. We all have an assumption that if faced with information afterwards, that we would have done otherwise. Oh, I would have been able to spot the Bernie Madoff scam. I would have been able to spot Enron if I had just done the due diligence on their books. I would have seen that Enron was a scam. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Most of us don't see this. And I'm not saying I'm special. I'm not saying that I'm so great at it. But I think if one thing my life has taught me, and I'm just going to share this, like I got screwed over big time when I was 20. Big time. Like, at a very vulnerable time in my life, I signed away a piece of paper that even the security guard at the consulate said, bro, do not sign this piece of paper. And I said, but they are my family. They would never screw me over for this. I signed away a crazy amount of money, and I did not know what I was doing at the time. And I believed these people because when you grow up, you assume family. You're like, family would never do this to me. You connect things. You want to be more rational. You want to be a more objective person. You want to be a better critical thinker. You want to get screwed over less. You want to make better decisions with your life. Learn a new language. Then learn to think in that language. I guarantee you it's proven effective in a lab. It's proven. So most of us, when we see Kobe Bryant put up a 35 piece and we're growing up, we're kids, we're like, great players put up 35. That's what great players do. And so you might see a guy like a Pascal Siakam or a Fred VanVleet put up a 35. And while you won't say it out loud, you won't say, oh, they're Kobe-esque. They're definitely more Kobe than the 7 points Scottie Barnes scored, right? You got to look past stuff. There are certain paintings where, or like there's some things you say, you have to unfocus your eyes so that they can properly see what you're looking at. It's a mental trick. Our eyes get completely confused when we look at a box score. Our brains process information very differently. And when you listen to Nick Nurse talk about how great Fred VanVleet is as a leader, or when you listen to Fred VanVleet talk about how great he is as a leader, I challenge you to untether your mind from their NBA champions, because no, they did not win that championship by themselves. Okay. And information has to change. We have to be willing, I think, as a society, and I'm talking world over, not just Raptor fans, as a society, we have to be willing to change our minds about things. As data changes, we have to be willing to adjust. The people who predict market crashes, they're wrong for a really long time. They're called crazy, they're called ostracized, and then they're right. And I'm not saying the broken clock is not wrong 2 times every single day. I get that theory. They're just sometimes early, and it takes a little while for something to come right, you know? I have been on my Scotty is going to be a superstar soapbox since the day he was drafted, and people have been telling me I'm nuts for 2 years. I just see something that maybe some people don't. There's a different set of analytics. I'm not being blinded by his, point totals or whatever, because I understand that's so much of a function of offense. So it's learning to not get distracted by all these things that usually distract most people. And whether it's box scores lying to you or post-game pressures lying to you, I think that it's very easy to get caught up in someone's reputation or their vernacular, their use of words. How many of us have grown accustomed to trusting people who sound really well-spoken? How many of us would trust a guy if he was like shaking when he was talking, An example that Malcolm Gladwell used in Talking to Strangers was how the Italian police put someone in jail because they didn't seem guilty, because they seemed guilty after their friend's passing. That was an example. Consider like the entire discussion about police reform, and consider, every single thing that has happened in the United States over the last 40 years when it comes to African Americans, unarmed African Americans, and the cops. And you will find that there is implicit bias baked in to that equation every single time. You can say it's racism, you can say it's classism, you can say it's whatever, but there is implicit bias that is being used to inform a decision that could potentially change someone's life or end someone's life. And we as a society need to learn to re-examine our prejudices and our biases about people in general and not jump to automatic conclusions based on snap judgments, because it does take a while and a lot of data sifting to come to an informed opinion about anyone. And I have to be willing to hold the opposite end. I have to be willing at least 10 to 12 times a year to reevaluate myself and re-examine biases and say, okay, is Siakam a superstar and I'm just missing it because I have a bias towards him not being a superstar? Is there that? Is Fred VanVleet just way better? Are the numbers on Fred VanVleet telling the truth versus the eye test, right? I have to be open to it, and you have to be willing. Yeah, don't troll, man. Trolling is low blow. Just don't do that. We have Con calling in. This should be fascinating. Con, what's up, man?
Hi, Rob. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. So last time I was last Raptor game, I was listening to the comments and I went back and because I had the game taped like you told me, and I looked at a few things. And tonight I watched the game a little bit more differently. I kind of focused in on a couple players. I watched everything that they did without the periphery outside the court. And here are the two things I've come up with, and I want to share them with you.
Okay.
First of all, when it comes to Fred, and I think this really, really shows that he's not a great leader, because when a guy is every time he drives and he misses a layup and he goes onto the ground and there's no foul called, he's lying on the ground for 5 seconds. He looks up in the air. I don't know if he's praying to God or something, while the play is going down the other end, and then he takes his time. He goes in a little foxtrot to run back, and that happens constantly. I watched it today. It happened not like 6-7 times, and
Agreed.
It was really, really that sucks the life out of the other 3 or 4 guys on the court. And my second comment is whenever Fred decides that, you know what, it's time for me to jack up a shot against 3 guys, and he misses a shot, once again, he looks up in the ceiling. He stands like a statue for 3 seconds, takes his time going back. Scotty and OG were looking at him a couple of times. He sucks the life out of these guys. And my comment, I watched Siakam. You know I'm a Siakam fan, and obviously. But I watched him last game, and then I watched him this game. We got to put things in perspective when it comes to Pascal. So I think to have him categorized as one of the top 10 or 15 guys in the league, it's not, because he doesn't have that skill set. I mean, we got to be clear on this. He's a great second option. Obviously, on the team, Scotty is going to develop his skills that are going to surpass Pascal's in a year or two. I mean, it's going to be obvious. And Pascal is more slotted as a second or third guy. Obviously, they're paying him a lot of money, so unless he takes a pay cut, he's not going to slot in fundamentally in terms of money and role on the team, because I watch him and he is a little bit too passive. Today, when Scotty was driving up against Embiid, I didn't see Pascal take the balls by the horn and drive against Embiid. Even if you don't have it, show that you got it. And he wouldn't go up and drive against Embiid. And I seen Scotty did a couple times. So you know what? That tells me if you're the alpha on the team and you're not doing that, you're not the alpha. So you know what? I watched those 2 guys specifically all game. Fred, to me, has to be on the way out, because Doughton can play a ton better defense, and he doesn't suck the life out of the other 4 guys on the court. And you know what? Pascal's got to, maybe with a different coach, he can transition into you know what? He's not Michael Jordan, so I think someone has put this into his head. So I think he's gotta play more to his positive attributes. He's great running. He used to be a fantastic energy guy. He used to get down in the stand and defend like a dog. But you know what? Someone's got to get Pascal back to what he used to be able to do at such a high level.
Look, I mean, look, Chris Bosh at one point, we tried to morph him from what he was ideally, which was a second or third option, into a primary guy, right? And you suffer in the playoffs as a result. You win 3 playoff games in his entire career with the Raptors. And then he goes on and he wins multiple championships with the Heat. And, people are like, see, Raptors couldn't use him. No, he was not a first option. I mean, like, it's such a crazy thing to say that he and LeBron James could be in the same series playing the same role, and one of those players is not definitively going to win that matchup 100 times out of 100. Obviously, there are things that Siakam does that would make him a very interesting second option in the same way that, but I think believe it or not, and this might sound very difficult for you because you're like, shit, Rob, like I finally moved off the first option. You're asking for too much here. But I think he's actually most suited to third option. And part of that is because I think very often second options do need to have a good synergistic relationship with the first option. I also think it's ideal that they be able to shoot. So whereas I think the championship season he averaged 16, 17 points per game on that team. I would argue he was the third option on that team. Okay. Behind Kyle Lowry and Kawhi Leonard. And just because Kyle Lowry is a very unselfish, right, second option, it doesn't mean that Pascal Siakam was ever in control of the offense any more than Kyle was. Kyle was the dictator in that offense. In fact, and then you look at the balanced team around, and it could be anyone's night, right? There were nights where it was Fred's night off the bench or Kawhi's night, or it could really come from anywhere. So I think he's most suited to third option, kind of like a Lamar Odom. Ironically, someone that people compare Scotty Barnes to. I think, that could be a Siakam type thing. I think Odom's probably the more gifted passer. Siakam probably the more, gifted scorer. And you just kind of like merge it from there. And I think that the second option should be a great shooter. And then the first option just needs to be a great overall playmaker. And I think it would work like that. The problem right now is he's not going to take third option or even second option money. He's obviously going to want a max. I think, at this stage, 28 years old, I also think the decline is about to come. We've already seen hints of the decline on defense. He was a great defender 3 years ago. Like, great.
Yeah.
Like, if I had to list out 10 best defenders in the NBA, he was on the cusp of that list. Right now, he would not make my top 50 defenders in the NBA. That is a very big fall off in 3 years. And it's only going to get worse. If history has taught us anything, even Kawhi has gotten worse on defense, right? So and Kawhi was all-time level defender. So I think that a guy like this, if he continues to fall back defensively, he's never been the greatest shooter or the smartest player on the court, then what he becomes is an albatross of a contract, which is a very inefficient isolation scorer who doesn't do a lot for you on defense, which is, the conversation around him has been MVP, top 5, whatever. Honestly, man, I think he's 2 years away from turning into a Tobias Harris level player. And that could be, and look, the Sixers obviously thought a lot of Tobias Harris, which is why they signed him to a frigging near max contract. But this is the level of player you could be working with, and it will not be worth, the contract. We would not be the only team to sign players who are not worth the contract. Zach LaVine signed a $44 million contract, whatever. He's not worth that. Bradley Beal is not worth, he's not worth 2/3 of the contract he signed with the Washington Wizards. But those guys are really fun to watch, for me at least. I think they're very entertaining. They're big names, they're guards, they put fans in seats. I think the Siakam situation is like, unless he drastically morphs himself back into like a 3-and-D type of player who does a lot of off-ball movement stuff, I would like to trade him personally.
Yeah, well, let me comment on that. First of all, I know having Pascal play on the periphery and him jacking up threes is not playing to his strong suit because he's never going to be a strong three-point shooter. It's almost like where Pascal is on the court, him and OG should almost switch positions because, Pascal should be the guy down low, cutting in and out, because OG is a way better three-point shooter. Mm-hmm. And I think Pascal's got to be doing more cutting and going inside because, inside the 2-point range, Pascal, his shot is much more effective. He's never going to be an effective three-point shooter, I don't think. And for him to play on the periphery is not probably his greatest suit. when Scotty can control the offense at the top of the key. And so
I think he's just gonna be willing to take them. You know what? Like, I mean, look, for the sake of the offense, I know sometimes people get very critical of Scotty taking threes because he's shooting like 29.7% or whatever, and sometimes people get critical of Siakam because, again, as I mentioned with the Malcolm Gladwell book, we all have implicit biases, and we have a bias that big people should, unless they are lights out shooters like a Karl Anthony Towns, they should go inside. But actually, the paint is so occupied right now with Jakob that actually Scotty and Pascal must shoot threes, even if they're not efficient threes, because, again, Fred VanVleet shoots like 39-40% inside the paint. You know what I mean? Like, is that an efficient shot? No. Does he go to it all the time? Yes. So how inefficient do you have to be from three to match a Fred VanVleet 2-point attempt? Like, you have to be like pretty bad from three. Then you have to shoot under 30%. So I'm just saying, like, I think if those two just took the shots that were made available to them, the thing with asking OG to just park himself out in the 3-point line is that's exactly what he came into the season demanding, that not be his sole role. And, at times you can see like he's wanted to do more. He's wanted to do more in the mid-range, off the dribble, whatever. It hasn't always looked pretty. At times it's looked great. At times we were talking about OG Anunoby potentially DPOY, potentially an all-star. His season has been so underrated. In all of this mess, he's played so great consistently, with the exception of like maybe 2-3 weeks there where he barely got the ball, barely got touches. He's been, is it crazy to say he's been the Raptors' best player? No. I think it's fairly cogent to say he's been the Raptors' best player on offense and defense combined. So yeah, so to ask your best player in a lot of ways to compromise for your second best player, I guess, or third best player in Siakam, it's kind of crazy, and then yeah, like he's also under contract. I don't know. I'm all over the map with this. I just think when players in 2023, players who don't shoot overly well or defend overly well, to me, they have to be like superstars for you to want to have to play them starter minutes.
Do you think Pascal can play defense or
Yes.
he just doesn't want to play defense?
I do think he can play defense. I don't think it helps that he's playing so many minutes, that he's carrying such a large load on offense. And I think if the offensive output was super efficient, you could live with some of the drop off on defense as long as it wasn't as bad as it's been. Like, he can dial up the defense 5%, dial up the efficiency 5%, and boom, we're talking superstar, or at least star, like a really high level star. But you're familiar with logarithmic scales, right? Like, 5% up in efficiency and 5% better on defense is it's not an off season of work. Let me just put it that way. That is crazy. That's a fundamentally different player. And I guess what I'm saying is, with Siakam, like, strength, better shooting, can he reverse his age at this point and go back to year 27? You know what I mean? It's such a shame in so many ways that so much of his prime has been wasted on bad teams. But he's a really big part of those teams, and it's difficult to untether the two. Tampa, the bubble, this year. Last year, I could argue the Raptors' best stretch of basketball came with him. Their second best stretch of basketball came without him. He hasn't morphed into the superstar that they envisioned when Kawhi left. And I think it's taken 3 years for them to hopefully wake up to that reality. It had to bubble up at the beginning of this season with all the MVP stuff, and it has predictably ended exactly where I said it would end in the beginning, which is he's not a top 10 player. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming on and, acknowledging that. Look, like, I hate that people pile on you in the comments, because when I'm listening to you, like, in the comments, I'm seeing like how people pile on me on Twitter when I say something unpopular. It's not healthy at all. Just because you think Siakam had a great game and some people don't think that he had a great game, there's no reason to get angry at you or for you to get angry at anybody else. There's really it's just basketball at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you can go and watch games and adjust your thinking. And sure, I'm sure we still have a massive gap in terms of how we see Siakam, based on how we're talking. But, maybe this is an inch in the right direction for both of us, and I'm glad that you were able to go and watch the games more critically. And you know, I definitely want to do that with Scotty as well. Like I've been doing that with Scotty and saying, okay, like what everyone's saying, he's not dialed in on defense enough. Let me watch this with a real critical eye. And sometimes you'd be surprised what you find when you hone in on someone expecting to find something.
Yeah, just one thing. So
Sure.
yeah, after listening to you for the last week and obviously looking at the game differently, I do think we have great consensus that, you know what, Fred's slow play, sucking the life out of the team constantly throughout the games. You know what? I think, you know what, Dalton brings energy to the team. I'd rather park Fred's ass on the bench the rest of the year, to be quite honest with you, because you know what? I think you'll probably see an improvement if you did that. But second of all, in terms of Pascal, he's got to find a way to get back to what made him really, really special. And he's got away from that. So I'm going to be watching if he ever gets that back again.
Yeah, I think so much of that was just being 25. Like, there's certain things that are just possible at 25 in the NBA that just won't be as possible at 30. And I'd love to tell you that players don't regress around exactly the age that he's regressing at, but they do. And everyone has told me for years when I was saying like, hey, like this is the best it's going to get. Like when I was looking at Pascal Siakam 26, 27, I was like, it's downhill from here. He can slow the decline, but it's not going to be like, this is not a DeMar story. DeMar is like a very rare story, and there are certain players like this. Thaddeus Young is another one, actually. These players peaked actually much later, partially because their game has never been predicated on quickness. Thaddeus Young's game was never predicated on quickness. DeMar's game has never been predicated on quickness. They're not bursty to begin with. And so even though they're athletic, they're both athletic, but they weren't bursty. Do you know what I mean? Paul Pierce
Yeah,
is another
for sure.
example of a guy who didn't peak at 26 like most people do, right? But there are certain guys where you can say like 80% of what this guy is doing on the court results is happening because he gets past his guy. What happens when he has to go through his guy, right? And that's where you start to say this guy's probably going to age poorly versus this guy's probably not going to age poorly. I don't think Nikola Jokic is going to age poorly. I don't think Luka Doncic is going to age poorly. These guys don't rely on athleticism to begin with. Everything that they use right now to be great is going to be in some form or another manageable 5 years from now. But Siakam, Ja Morant, specifically guys like this. I mean, Ja Morant maybe not because he's super smart. Like he's a really smart player and he's developing into a shooter. But like guys, for them to age properly, twitchy, bursty, first step guys to age gracefully in the NBA without falling off a cliff, those guys definitely need to add an outside shot and definitely need to start thinking about the game on a different level. And I'm not seeing that from Siakam. I'm seeing him, kind of like he's making improvements, but his body is going the other way. And it's like when he crosses 30, like the rim running transition gazelle that you have in your mind from those years that you watched and fell in love with probably and became this huge fan of, it just like Vince Carter, getting past his guy at 32, it just wasn't as easy. Vince Carter's greatest athlete in NBA history. It wasn't as easy. LeBron James right now, we're watching him put up this statistically amazing season, but look at his EPM, look at his box plus minus. It's not the same anymore. Everyone falls off. It's just a natural part of life. And I'm saying for some guys that drop off is gradual over 3 years. For some people it happens at 30, some people it happens at 24, some people it happens at 32, but it happens for everybody at some point. I have a feeling, and this is just a feeling, that Siakam's drop off is going to happen next year or the year after, and it is going to be sudden. It is going to be a plummet. And when it happens, he is going to be relegated to the level of player that I'm saying like a Tobias Harris type. And that will be like, because when people talk about James Harden and stuff, these are MVPs.
Yeah.
This is the difference. There is a massive difference. Even a Kawhi Leonard, after all the surgeries and injuries and whatever, is still like an MVP level player. This is a superstar. When you hit that level, it's very difficult to then imagine you falling off like and becoming a role player. But If you don't hit that level, you don't develop the outside shot. Like even a Russell Westbrook, he's like a multiple, time MVP candidate at least, and an MVP winner. He's fallen off massively because he doesn't have the outside shot. So I think at some point, when you have to ask a star or someone who thinks that they're a star to settle into role player, you have to ask yourself, do they actually have the role player skills? Because there is a sort of diminutive or like less than way of thinking about role players, right? Like we assume that anyone can just do what Jared Vanderbilt does, or anyone can just do what Emmanuel Quickly does, or anyone can just go and do what freaking Chris Boucher does. But they can't. They can't. They can't. It's a specialized skill set. What Chris Boucher does on a night-to-night basis is very special because there aren't a lot of players in the NBA that can do what he does. There aren't a lot of players in the NBA who can just do what Otto Porter does or do what Jared Vanderbilt does or any of these guys, like, or Nick Claxton. You know what I mean? And at some point you do like, imagine for instance, Kobe Bryant, all those years he had spent developing isolation scoring, playmaking, etc. And then in age 36, they were like, hey, Kobe, you've had a great run. Your numbers have fallen off. You're not efficient. We're not winning. We want you to stand in the corner and be Ray Allen. He can't be. He's not Ray Allen. He doesn't have that shot. He can never be that player. And so you take a guy like that and you say, well, he's still Kobe, but man, it's getting worse and worse every year. Those numbers are going down. Those percentages are going down. How many more, 7 for 22 games are we going to watch from Kobe Bryant? It's not the same guy anymore. But there isn't really a great deal way to adjust away from that with the player that way. Like you can't. After the Achilles tear, it was pretty much over for Kobe. And not everyone is going to be like a malleable and very moldable guy like a Steph Curry or a Kevin Durant. And shooting is all obviously the great equalizer, right? But like, what can you do when you don't have the basketball is always going to be a question that I ask for role players. It's like, what do you do for me when you don't have the basketball? Are you a great screen setter? Are you a great shooter? Are you a great off-ball mover? Like, do you just facilitate? Like, are you great at peeling off screens and stuff? And it's like, that's a skill set. There's a reason why Landry Shamet is paid $10 million a year, like, and he's barely playing. Like, this is a skill set. Like, and not everyone can just do it. They just can't do it. If they could do it, everyone would do it. They can't do it. And not everyone can do what Jakob Poeltl is doing. It's not like when Shaquille O'Neal is no longer Shaq, he can turn into Jakob Poeltl. He'll never be Jakob Poeltl, and Jakob Poeltl will never be Shaq. I think we just have this way of looking at role players like they're less than stars. And I think what I would like to do is adjust away from that and just say they're just very different, and they're paid a lot more because what they do is deemed way more valuable. But it's very difficult to say that Dennis Rodman or, someone like Ben Wallace didn't have as big an impact or close to as big an impact on winning as a star player, because they were, So
Yeah,
I think the concept is being a star in your role. Be a star in your role.
Yeah. And your comment on the decline has a lot of merit, because not just from year to year, you can kind of see as the year has gone on and it's become more obvious and focused that you can see a little bit of decline in Pascal's game as the season has gone on, not just from year to year. It seems like his skill set it seems like it's starting to evaporate from game to game, to be quite honest with you. So I think the decline is coming in season too. So
yeah, it could. And like sometimes we'll see like a guy come out really strong and then maybe an injury disrupts his rhythm. I think Siakam's been a guy who he doesn't respond well to long periods off, right? He had to take time off with the groin. He kind of comes back. I was worried when he was coming back. I was like, oh man, he's going to be bad, because the last time he came back from injury, he tanked the defense single-handedly, which was last year. Defense was humming, playing really well without him. He comes back. It's horrible. League worst all time. And I'm just like, is he going to do that again? And he didn't. And he was pretty okay. But then we saw the decline later. And yeah, like they're just like, as you go through the season, in the off season, whatever, you add new stuff, right? It's new for you. It's new for other people. But after about 3 to 4 weeks, people catch up to your new bag of tricks,
For
right?
sure.
And then you need to be able to go through people because you're not be able to go around them anymore. So now you need to leverage your physical advantages. So, Joel Embiid came into this season with a new bag of tricks. There's a lot of stuff that he did in the first week, 2 weeks. I'm like, woof, that's new. This is interesting, He had new counters, new little turnaround. There was like a new little gather there. Okay, it's new for about 4 weeks. Now we catch up. Now what can you do? Well, if you're Joel Embiid, you're physically imposing, you just go through guys. You go over them, you go through them. There just isn't a player in the league who can stop you one-on-one. So yeah, like same thing with Giannis. Like his moves get stale, they get old, they get scouted, they start taking away the right hand, he goes to the left hand, and then boom, like now what can you do? Well, if you're Giannis, you're Joel Embiid, if you're Nikola Jokic, if you're these guys, you just go through guys. You go through them, you go over them, it's just physics. If you're Kawhi, like how did Lou Dort, a scrappy defender, but still, just a guy in the NBA. How did he force an air ball for Kawhi because the gap between Kawhi 3-4 years ago and today may not be apparent looking at the stat sheet, but there is a couple of inches that he can no longer elevate and get by his guy the same way. And so the same move that used to work doesn't work anymore, especially when you put a bloodhound on him like Lou Dort. So I think it's adjustment period for everybody. Everyone needs to just realize that you can come into a season and dominate for a couple of weeks when people haven't scouted you. But once the season has started and people start to understand, they play you 2-3 times. And that's usually why the playoffs expose so many players, because you play the same team 6-7 times. Your same move that worked on that one-off Saturday in February, it doesn't work anymore. They know. You don't have anything else that you can go to. They can just sit on that hand and force you to turn away. And where we are with tracking data and the stats and the advanced stats now, like we could legitimately say he's 10% worse when he turns over this shoulder. So always when he does this, force him to that shoulder, it's going to be, we're going to live with a 38% fadeaway mid-range shot. And that's just what it's going to be. And Scotty's going to learn this too. When Scotty starts being featured more on offense, he's going to get exposed to it. At that point, he's going to have to adjust very quickly. And let's hope at that point that Scotty is, as hard a worker as Pascal Siakam, right? Because that's one thing I'll never take away from Siakam is how hard he works. But let's hope he's a lot smarter and a lot more physically dominant so that he can actually get around that. But this comes for all players who want to be first options. Is you get scouted like crazy. They take away what you want to do. They take away the second thing you want to do, and you're gonna have to just get to a point where you become unstoppable. And there are very few players who can get to that level, and usually they all have a massive physical advantage.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching these next few games, and hopefully the play-in with great uncertainty, because I want to see really if Pascal declines more and crumbles and starts showing things that are like some of the shots he put up today were just insanely bad. So I mean,
well, you're a Siakam fan, so let me end this off. Let's end this chat out with a positive thing about Siakam. Yesterday, when I heard Fred VanVleet going on and on about how Siakam's got all NBA within reach and how he's going to be a top 5, he's top 5. He's the exact quote is he looks top 5 to me. I'm his biggest critic, and I was just like, there's a version of this where if Siakam is selfish, which I've always suspected he's not selfish. I've always believed that Pascal Siakam's not selfish, misguided. I've always considered him misguided as opposed to selfish. I consider Fred VanVleet selfish, but I consider Pascal Siakam to be misguided and somewhat misinformed about his own talents and maybe a little bit delusional about the talents of other people in the gap. And it's I think of it more like ignorance. It's not a deliberate, malicious thing. It's ignorance. And so I thought about it and I'm like, man, if he is, however, like selfish, the next 6 games as a petition to boost his numbers for all NBA to make a case, this could be bad. And he comes out tonight and, he kind of, says, hey, Scotty's got it going, 15 shots, he takes 15 shots. And yeah, he definitely got into a couple bad habits late and, he took maybe just a couple shots that he shouldn't have where some guys were open, but overall, and, he was on the court for a very disastrous run to start out the second quarter where I think his defense really did not help situation. And I think, somewhat holding the ball too much, but overall his volume of shot attempts, 15, did not reflect a guy who's gunning for all NBA, because if you consider 15 shots in 42 minutes. That's like OG level usage.
Exactly.
So that's not bad. So kudos to Siakam for not taking more shots, I think. And hopefully deep down, like I don't know who he is as a person. I've never actually met him, but I would like to think that deep down he cares about his team more than all NBA. And I would
think
hope
so.
that would be the case.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for letting me chat with you tonight, Rob, and for all the guys that were commenting. I like listening to the comments, even if I get mentioned, because you know what, it gives me the opportunity to analyze what I'm watching too. So I really like it, actually.
Honestly, man, this is the best possible outcome of any of this. I wish that every single person I've ever had a disagreement with could come on and have a healthy discussion and we could meet somewhere in the middle. I think that'd be great. And I think that'd be great for all sports. We're at a stage where ESPN's just all like, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. And then it's all combative. But like really, I think
Exactly.
all we're trying to do is all of us are trying to get a better, richer, deeper understanding of the game we're watching on television, right? Or
Yeah.
live. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
really appreciate it. And thank
Yeah.
you so much for all the super chats and
Oh,
stuff, man. Like
you're
that's
more than
just
welcome.
so huge. Your generous contributions have gone a really long way to helping us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Have a nice
man.
night.
Cheers. Bye. All right. Okay, so continuing, finishing off the Nick Nurse stuff that we did not
But
finish
they were
before.
generating really good. Those we were generating really good ones tonight. I think we started 2 for 14. So again, we'd probably shoot the ball a little better in the first half. We'd be in a little better shape. I think that I've said this many times. We need OG. We need Pascal to make sure they're taking their catch and shoot threes in a good amount, right? And we know Freddie's going to get his up or get his chances. We still have Gary, hopefully coming back soon. Always provides us with a great perimeter threat as well. So there's my synopsis on that.
Obviously, when a team shoots that well, especially in a quarter,
Yep.
some of it's them. How much of it was you guys giving them stuff, or was a lot of it just them?
No, I mean, I think we were not nearly doing the stuff we needed to do. It looked like it was going to work out to be a really good game plan because we played pretty straight up in the first half, and then we kind of got back to, doing some things to create turnovers and get them out of rhythm and stuff. I thought we had them out of rhythm really the whole second half. So, a little bit of a straight up. I just wish we wouldn't have. Well, I wish they wouldn't have made them all, right? Because they did. I mean, just kept making them. We gave them some in transition. That's always on us, right? So we'll take a good chunk of the blame on that, but they also have to make them, and they did.
Did you think the switch to Pirtle and Tucker in the second half messed them up for a while?
I mean, listen, we got to the point where we did it with about 3 minutes to go in the first because we figured we gotta shut this off a little bit. And I mean, we did a lot of changes at halftime, and that certainly got to them right away. I mean, we turned them over a ton. I mean, they have 18. Yeah, I mean, we started turning them over a lot. And the biggest thing though is we had them taking, I would say, certainly less rhythmic shots in the second. Even they had some corner threes, but they just weren't the same ones. And we were flying around a lot more, challenging, much better, et cetera. So I don't know if it screwed them up or not, but we started playing a lot harder and a lot better, that's for sure.
And then last question for me is just 2 big games from Scotty. What are you seeing, that he's addressing with this team?
Yeah, I mean, he's, he kind of started doing this last year down the stretch, was just using his size and physicality to get some work done, right? And we need him because we usually, when this is our starting lineup, we usually get one of those guys with some type of size or weight advantage, right? And we got to take advantage of that. Either throw it in there, take it in there, rebound it in there, whatever it is to use that size advantage because, there's going to be some second shots available. For sure, right? And just
That was funny. There's going to be some second shots available.
gives us a chance to play to our strengths.
All right. Okay. We do have a final caller. NSN. What's up?
Yo, okay, well, let's speak up. I've already had the camera on before. I want to say hi, and I want to take the opportunity to kind of do some propaganda about the draft, if I
Okay.
may. Yeah, I really appreciate the draft. I think you also have a mind that's a bit like a scout, very good mind for that. So I wanted to kind of pick your brain for a second. I think we really want Cason Wallace, right? We really want a guard, right?
I do. I don't know if we do. I definitely do. I want Casey Wallace a lot. Yep.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. I think I want Cason Wallace. At the same time, I think Jeff Doughton is also very good at defense.
Mhm.
And it allows
More the
me
merrier,
to,
man. More the merrier. And Kaysen can shoot. So, I
yeah,
mean,
he's better. I'm sure Cason Wallace is better, like no question.
he's younger. I mean, he's 19,
True.
right? Jeff Dowtin's 25. But there's nothing that says you can't play both these guys. Because, look, if Siakam's back and Scotty's back, that's a lot of primary initiator reps between those two guys. Your point guard has to be more of a Derek Fisher
Yeah.
than a Mark Jackson or a Ricky Rubio. You don't need a pound point guard. You need a guy who's just there, who can guard Patrick Beverly. Like guys like this, Derek Fisher, role playing point guards who just know their role, can be secondary initiator types, who know when to get off the ball. Kaysen has that quality, so does Jeff. I think you play those two guys, okay, maybe you're not a great backcourt, but I don't think you're losing anything here. So yeah.
I see the same thing. You don't have to do too much very much to make it work. What I think is I want to use this propaganda moment for just a second because I see that instead of going for Cason Wallace, because he might go on 13th pick and we might have the 14th or 15th pick, I'm thinking we could use that to take a big upside on like forward centers. And I really, really love Twin Tower system. I think when I see Brook Lopez and Giannis go at it, something about it makes me think, I don't think it's the modern NBA. I don't think it's like, oh, the next big thing. But I do believe it's a trend. I see Memphis doing it. I see it happen with Nicholas Claxton and Ben Simmons. It's not really like a real Twin Tower system, but
Okay.
So I see it and I'm like, I think we could have that. We won't lose too much on defense, but I mean, we have a lot of good wings. What I really see is I really want a fast point guard. And I think Kyra Lewis Jr. could be that at the Pelicans. He's low minutes. He isn't appreciated much. I mean, Dyson Daniels is a better point guard for them. And I think overall he might have actually a higher career than Kyra Lewis. But Kyra Lewis could be just what we need. I think he plays like De'Aaron Fox. Also, De'Aaron Fox is way better than Kyra Lewis for sure. But Kyra Lewis kind of plays quickly. He's fast, and he has impressed me. I think with that, we could have Scotty Barnes in a Domantas Sabonis role and Kyra in a pretty interesting role. If he can finish, his free throw rate isn't bad. That makes me think he might project to have a good 3-point shot or a serviceable 3-point. And we won't have to sacrifice a lot for him. We won't have to sacrifice OG or something like that. So when you see Jaden Ivey, you could see Kyra Lewis being way worse, but more affordable.
Well, number one, he's very undersized, even though he has a bit of a wingspan to make up for it. Number two, I don't like his defense.
Yeah, I do.
At all. According to Crafted, he is a 24th percentile defender. His Crafted defensive plus minus is negative 0.7. At the point of attack, especially, like you have to look at, first of all, Rank Scrub, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it, man. As always. I look at positional strength across the NBA. Point guard seems to be a very talented position. Okay. And when you're not talking point guards, you're talking guys who are basically taking turns playing from that position on the court, be it Giannis, be it Luka, be it whoever, right? even if they're not typical point guards, quick, jittery, Allen Iverson, John Morant types, they're still guys playing at the top. Matchup hunting, longer wings, I worry about any non-defender who's 6 feet tall. So you're not the first person to mention Kyra Lewis to me. I'm sure you won't be the last. I'm not a huge fan, but that's just me. I definitely prefer Dyson Daniels on that team. Yeah, for the Pelicans, for me, it's really Dyson and Trey for me, those two guys. But I'm sure I'd be cool with Herb Jones too. I like him. But I'm sure that the Pelicans have the exact same thought process as I do. David Griffin's probably thinking, yeah, those are the three guys I don't want to move. You can take Kyra Lewis. You can take Jackson Hayes. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, guard depth would be something we could work on. Yeah. So that's my propaganda for a second. And I think, what do you think about Twin Tower system? Like your deep thought, like it's bad, it's good. Like I think it would be difficult to apply
Define
here,
Twin Towers, because when you say Twin Towers, apart from, obviously the actual Twin Towers and my entire childhood flashing before my eyes and the terrible thing that happened, I'm thinking of Tim Duncan and David Robinson. As in mid posts, low post scorer or mid range, like guys clogging up the middle, and I don't love that. I think basketball positions are vastly misunderstood. I think it'd be much more accurate to look at players as connectors than power forwards, or a player as a rim runner or primary initiator, secondary initiator. I think these positions are far more accurate and reflective of the way basketball is played today, as opposed to, well, this is a center, this is a power forward, this is a small forward, whatever, right? Because it's like I watch one possession of Indiana or Sacramento play basketball, and I'm just like, I don't know who's who where, but I know that Tyrese Halliburton has the ball a lot, but in this situation, is Ben Mathurin the power forward, or is Ben Mathurin the shooting guard? I think it will always help you to have here are three things that I think will never hurt: playmaking, passing, knowing when to score, when to pass, etc. Just playmaking for others, making people better. Number two, defense. Defensive, just attention to detail as a help defender, but also like an ability to laterally east-west switch. Three, versatility, being able to match up with different sized bodies. Like, are you the type of person who has the skill set to guard a heavier offensive player and a smaller offensive player and a bigger offensive player? So a guy like OG Anunoby for me is invaluable for that reason, because he has versatility up the wazoo, right? Fourth is shooting. Yeah, so there's four things really: outside shooting, whatever. And then maybe fifth is paint finishing. It's never going to hurt you to have a guy who can finish well in the paint. You don't have to ask him to do it all the time, but those are five things, right? Beyond that, I'm not really sure. Everything is, but ideally every player on your team is some variation of all those things. In a hypothetical dream world, you just, I don't know, you have a team full of Michael Jordans, yeah, but it's not gonna happen. But you want to have guys who can do all of that stuff. And I think, whereas in the past you had guys like Steve Novak and Kyle Korver and guys like this just able to exist in the league despite not being good rebounders, despite not being good defenders, despite not being versatile, despite not being great passers. I think the talent is so high in the NBA now. People don't realize, because these guys have to go up against each other, right? But if you were to just drop the Boston Celtics today into the 80s, they would be killing teams, just with how talented they are, how big they are, how athletic they are. You take the best teams today, and it's even if the superstars at the top haven't adjusted much, you can't say oh, Tatum, Shea would compare to Jordan. Jordan's still better, but the 30th to 90th to 200th guys, those guys are just way better than they ever were before. And I think that has to do with the population boom across the world, and there's just more people to field from. Basketball is a bigger sport in so many areas. The league is going international, so it's just the skill set. You can't be a guy who just shoots and does nothing else anymore. You just can't be that guy anymore. You can't just be a guy who rebounds and then does nothing else. You got to be So to the Twin Tower
Well,
stuff, I don't think that that has anything to do with anything, but it's always going to be advantageous to be big.
yeah, of course.
There's no advantage to being small in the NBA that I can think of,
At this moment,
unless,
no.
of course, in your mind you associate small with quick, which it's not, because I'm
Well,
small, and I
Jared,
guarantee you there's a 7-footer out there who's way quicker than me. So it's like you got to untether the two things. In an ideal world, your entire roster would be 6'8", 6'9" guys. So in
yeah,
the off chance that, so to the Twin Tower specific thing that you said, yeah, it's not necessary. But it so happens that two big guys in the paint on offense and defense typically tends to lead to efficient offense and defense.
you
Tends to be.
have you have paint finishing more often than not with those two big guys.
Right.
You,
But
if
then
some
in
of them can
transition,
shoot,
it
that'll
can
be
kill you
good.
because if those guys are not fast, like a
Yeah,
Giannis and a Brook work because Giannis is a
it's
freak
fast.
athletically and Brook can shoot deep threes from like 35 feet away. If you change those two variables, right? Like
Yeah,
that's not like something that most people can even try to do. And the Raptors could think about trying to do that with, Pascal and Jakob or something like that. But the gap is so immeasurably large.
yeah,
Like,
because
don't
of the
assume
two.
because one guy's 7 feet and the other guy's 7 feet that they're the same. Brook Lopez has always been a good shooter. He's the leading. Get this. Can you believe that he is a leading scorer in Nets history?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
A
Brooke
team
has
that
had an
had
amazing
Vince Carter, a
year.
team that had Dr. J, Brook Lopez is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the leading scorer in Nets
Wow.
history. And just because he was always that guy. He was always a fantastic scorer, and he just had to stretch his range out a little bit, and now he's a great 3-point shooter. And so if he can't do that, this Twin Tower stuff doesn't work. I mean, if it did work, DeMarcus Cousins would be employed in the league right now.
Yeah, of course.
Jaleel Okafor would still be in the league right now,
Yeah.
but these guys aren't here. Enes Kanter, like
I
size
see.
is not the advantage that it used to be.
Yeah, I see. I see it. I see it. So, for example, when people talk about twin towers, right? They talk about those two bigs. Some of them can shoot. Some of them can attack. They're efficient on offense. They're efficient on defense. I think that's a narrative, even though it's not super precise, unfortunately. But it's what the narrative kind of goes. You see Cleveland Cavaliers, you see Memphis, and you see Milwaukee, right?
Mhm.
For you, for sure, even Mobley and Jarrett Allen is not that efficient. I mean, Jarrett Allen is 6'9". He's not that tall. He's as tall as Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is pretty good defensively. Anthony Davis is pretty good defensively. They're doing okay in the Lakers as well. So, but yeah, at this point, I'm just pushing a narrative, and it's probably not accurate. So, my bad.
Yeah, like look, as I said, in a vacuum, having long, tall players on the court is going to be helpful, typically,
Yeah.
provided that you can adjust for quickness, skill, because size to skill is the thing that Brian Colangelo used to talk about all the time. What is the compromise of being 7 feet? Well, nothing in theory. Victor Wembanyama is a great example of that, 7'5", and he's just as skilled and talented as most small forwards, right? Coming into the draft, it just so happens that he's taken all of Anthony Davis is the same. Kristaps Porzingis is the
Joel
same.
Embiid.
And if you look at all of these guys, from Kristaps to Anthony Davis to Victor Wembanyama, they all grew up playing guard, all of them. So they develop all the guard skills that you need. But I'm saying that now we are at an age where all 5 players on the court need to have some guard skills in order to function in the NBA.
NBA.
And yeah, you can get away with one guy, maybe Kevon Looney last year. He doesn't really have guard skills necessarily. You can get away with playing some minutes for him. Maybe one guy like a Rob Williams last year, he doesn't really have guard skills. Both those teams in the finals last year had exactly one of those guys. All the other guys, Al Horford has guard skills. Draymond Green has guard skills, right? Like their bigs. Otto Porter has guard skills. Like he was playing minutes for Golden State last year.
I
Grant
see.
Williams has guard skills. Jason Tatum has guard skills. Like these guys are all 6'8", 6'9". Jason Tatum is a huge human being, enormous human being. When people think he's 6'6", 6'7", he's definitely bigger. I swear he's bigger, and he's a guard. You know, having big guys, who can defend, who have long arms, who have guard skills. That's why Scotty is such a impressive building block going forward, and so is OG. You know, because these are big guys who can legitimately guard 1 through 5, 1 through 4 easily, or at least 2 through 5. And they have like that. So give me a guy like that over a guy like Nick Claxton for sure. You know, even though Nick Claxton's pretty switchy. The Jared Allen and Evan Mobley thing works because Evan Mobley is super switchable.
Yeah.
But if he was like, you know, if he wasn't switchable, like if he couldn't guard a perimeter player, you just like,
Yeah,
how do you, you know, being
yeah.
big, how are you supposed to stop a John Morant? Especially, look, the rule changes in the NBA have made it so that it's almost impossible. You can't just park your ass in the paint.
Yeah.
3 seconds in the key means these guys always have to step out, right? And
You can
three-pointers
punish them
being
for that.
so valuable means that if you break past your guy, it's either a clear bucket or it's an open three every time. So, you know, teams have tried this out, this multiple bigs lineup shit many times. It rarely ever works. And again, when it does work, it's usually when one of those bigs has incredible switchability and guard skills. So it worked for Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis in the bubble, right? Anthony Davis, very switchable, also has a ton of guard skills. So yeah, I don't think you can have two. So yeah, you might be able to get away with Jakob, right? But the other guy has to be, you know, a better version of Siakam or Siakam himself for it to be reasonable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
All
Cheers. Cheers, NSN. Bye. All right. And almost another 4-hour stream. My gosh, we have a lot to say. Thank you to everyone for sticking it out with us. I realize there's some videos that definitely need to come out for this channel, and I've been very, very burnt out lately. I'm kind of like sleeping a lot. The Pendance Film Festival is coming up. It's taking up a lot of time. I'm behind on an editing assignment for filmmaking, so I apologize. Definitely expect some stuff to come out next week. There's a video breakdown on Jeff Doughton. There's a video that I already recorded on the optimism of, you know, playoff Scotty and what he could be. Yeah. I realize I think like the Honest trailer was the last real video, right? So anyway, we will get to that, but good loss, I guess. I mean, good attempt tonight. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us. And yeah, I'll catch you guys after the next game. The Raptors, it doesn't really get easier, but it doesn't really get harder either. And I think a lot of how this season boils down will ultimately come down to whether or not Boston and Milwaukee decide to treat this like a rest game or treat this like a mission statement, you know. And the problem with the Raptors is they've been good for so long, like for the most part, like last 4 or 5 years. Giannis, Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, they've all grown up kind of like being, you know, competitive with the Raptors. So it's hard to look at a team like this and just say it's basically a scrub lottery team now, you know. So maybe they will treat it like a lottery team and treat Siakam like a tank commander and you know, not dress up for that game. Or, you know, they could play spoiler. You know, they could be like, you know what, like we'll rest any game, but that Raptors team, we need to send a message to them in case we see it in the first round. Or you go the other way, since Milwaukee and Boston are the very likely opponents in the playoffs, they could probably just be like, you know what, we're not even letting you get an upset on us to build some confidence or whatever, right? I don't know. Or they could use it to mollywop the floor with us and beat us by 50 or something like that and make a statement game saying, play in for what? I don't know. So anyways, thanks a lot for the 127 of you who stuck it out all the way through. Appreciate y'all as always. Make sure to hit like on your way out. I would very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, talk to you later. Bye.